Thank you very much.
The Market Update, Monday to Thursday, 6 to 7 p.m.
Want to stay ahead of the financial game? Join us tonight from 6 to 7 p.m. for an insightful journey through the day's market developments, financial updates, and investment news. Tune in for your daily dose of financial intelligence as we navigate the twists and turns of the financial landscape with expert insights. Only on the SAFM Market Update.
SAFM Market Update with Jimmy Muyaha.
Top stories at 3. Police confirm successful evacuations at Stilfontein Mine, and KZN Transport MSC conducts inspection after heavy rainfall. For SAFM News, I am Ondilambana, and a very good afternoon. Northwest Acting Police Commissioner Patrick Asaneng has confirmed that all the illegal miners at the Buffelsfontein Mine in Stilfontein have been successfully evacuated. On Monday, police in the province, along with mine rescue services, entered the third and final phase of its operations to retrieve illegal miners from the disused mine. Rescue volunteers conducted a final sweep of the mine shafts this morning. 246 illegal miners resurfaced and 78 bodies were retrieved this week. Briefing the media in Stilfontein, Asaneng said Operation Vala Umgodi will continue.
There are no longer people alive or corpses that are still underground to be extracted. We consulted with the mine rescue services, who assured us that today they will also do their own mop-up operations. Insofar as the operation is concerned, we are continuing not only at 11 Shaft but in all the areas where illegal mining is taking place.
The Judicial Conduct Tribunal probing sexual harassment allegations against Eastern Cape Judge President Selby Mbenenge has heard of messages between him and the complainant Andiswa Mengo. Evidence leader advocate Salome Skippers probed Mengo on why she told the top judge where she lived. Skippers found this through messages that form part of the evidence between the judge and Mengo. Mengo accuses the judge president of sexual harassment between the period of June 2021 to November 2022. She explained to Skippers that she told Judge Mbenenge this information due to his seniority and out of respect.
Kubhosi wami and ndiye ndabona uba mandimphendule kule mibuzo andibuza yona.
As I have mentioned initially, that firstly, this person is my boss, and I saw it fit for me to answer the questions that he's asking me.
Ndabe ndifuna ugcina ke naleyo ba ndingumntu ongezantsi apha kuye ngokweposition.
And I also wanted to be mindful of the fact that I am someone very much junior to his level.
Ndaqhubeka nokumhlonipha ke ngolo hlobo.
And I continued with respecting him.
The pre-trial of Thabo Bester prison escape saga has been postponed to the 21st of July 2025. The Free State High Court has postponed the case pending 2 matters involving rape and murder convict Thabo Bester and Dr. Nandipama Kudumana. In one of his applications, Bester is raising a concern of alleged unfair treatment at Jose Mampuru, and he also wants his laptop, among others, to prepare for the trial. Magudumana is also waiting for judgment at the Supreme Court of Appeal, where she seeks to nullify her arrest in Tanzania. KwaZulu-Natal MEC for Transport and Human Settlements, Siboniso Duma, is expected to conduct an inspection of roads and houses that have been damaged by heavy rainfall. This follows prolonged heavy rains across the province. Department spokesperson Dabentle Sibiya.
We've received calls, photos and videos from communities that are isolated and battling to access schools, hospitals and socio-economic centers. Prolonged rainfall has affected construction of new projects and worsened the condition of roads that are being repaired. Equally, as we move communities to new houses, a long list of residents without houses is increasing following the destruction of their houses.
South Korea's suspended President Yoon Suk-yeol has refused to take part in a second day of questioning in a criminal investigation into his attempt to impose martial law. A hearing is underway into arguments that the warrant for Yoon's arrest was not legal. The Constitutional Court is holding a separate session to decide whether to permanently remove him from office. The BBC's Shaima Khalil has the details.
It's been a 24 hours of high drama, high stakes, high emotions, and you can actually make that argument for the past 2 months here in South Korea as this country has descended into one of its worst, if not its worst, political crises really in its history. Yoon Suk-yeol is continuing to be detained, the impeached president, after a dramatic arrest at the presidential residence. Today he was summoned for more questioning and he and his legal team refused. So as it stands, he's arrested, he's detained, but he continues to be silent.
Recapping the top story, Northwest Acting Police Commissioner Patrick Asaneng has confirmed that all the illegal miners at the Balfourfontein mine in Stilfontein have been successfully evacuated. I am Ondalambana for SAFM News. Headlines at 3:30.
Coming up in your sports this hour, make or break as SA teams hunt playoffs in Europe. Then the Joburg Super Kings all set for Pretoria Capitals in the Gauteng Derby at the Wanderers Stadium, and defending Australian Open champion Jannik Sinner through to the third round of the tournament. More details at 3:30.
SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide. Leading the conversation. Outsurance has another random fact for you. In 1999, a litre of petrol cost just under 3 Rand. Now it's about 21 Rand. It's scary how prices keep going up. In times like these, it's encouraging to know that Outsurance has got your back and is committed to saving you money on your car insurance. SMS out to 30754. That's out to 30754. Danica knows all about saving on her 2018 Haval H2.
I saved 455 Rand. It was quick and easy.
Here's Lebu with her sweet 644 Rand saving on her 2019 Mazda CX-3.
Gave me the best quote ever. My savings is 644 Rand. Come join our insurance and save some money.
You heard it here first. SMS out to 30754. That's out to 30754. With Outsurance, you always get something out. A licensed insurer and FSP. T's and C's online.
Defending champions Bayer Leverkusen want to stay close to the log leaders, while Borussia Mönchengladbach are navigating a path to the top 4. This is the Bundesliga. Football as it's meant to be. Catch Bayer Leverkusen versus Borussia Mönchengladbach on Saturday, 18 January at 7:30 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available at your fingertips on SABC Plus. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
My name is Bandi Linyawane. I'm 17 and I'm a professional cricket player. While on tour, I was battling to keep up with school, so my parents moved me to UCT Online High School. It's changed the game for me. With the ability to learn from anywhere, I can get ahead and stay ahead. Sign up at uctonlinehighschool.com. It's not too late. Applications close 20 January 2025.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m.
So I often talk about this and I say, you know what, when we end the show daily, the National Pulse at 6 p.m., the National Pulse continues, because by its very nature, your pulse rate continues, be it nationally in South Africa and all around the globe. And therefore I say, in fact, feeling the National Pulse is a 24/7 business, isn't it? And true to form, because I get home and then you find out there's this imminent announcement of a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas, this ongoing issue that started specifically on the 7th of October. If not beyond that, but certainly that's what happened. And there's been so much talk since then in terms of what was agreed upon, what's been threshed out, when does it kick in, and are there any sidetracking to that particular issue. So we're going to talk about that first up with Anne Hertzberg first up, and then George Galloway. My name's Ashraf Garda. Welcome to the show. It is the National Pulse. You, as always, have an opinion, and I'd love to engage with you. 086 000 2032. You can also WhatsApp me. You have an option of text or voice note. 0614 104 107. And you can tweet, absolutely, on the X platform. Just tweet me, Ashraf Garda. Do also tag SAFM Radio. Use the hashtag The National Pulse. And if you're listening for the very first time, tell me where you are listening from. Love to know with a good thumbs up. You also know, besides just listening on the radio in South Africa nationwide, people can connect with us by streaming live all around the world. So if you are that person, welcome to the show. Welcome to the National Pulse. Okay, let's get to the first issue then. Israel-Hamas ceasefire. What is the state of play right now? And what do we need to look out for? So that conflict, 15 months or so, and we understand a ceasefire agreement has been reached. And the broad strokes that will see Israeli hostages held in Gaza released in exchange for many more Palestinians who are imprisoned in Israel. We also understand there's been support in terms of putting the deal together from the USA, Egypt, Qatar. That's what we know. What we don't really know is what actually goes on behind the scenes. So let's get some thoughts from two different perspectives. George Galloway comes up later on. First up, Anne Hertzberg, who's a legal advisor of the NGO Monitor, so a Jerusalem-based research institute. And thank you for joining us here on the National Pulse.
Good afternoon.
Thank you. So let's understand this, right? Just your initial reaction upon hearing of the ceasefire.
Well, my initial reaction, I'm an Israeli. I actually knew one of the hostages that was executed by Hamas in a tunnel in August. It was a boy I'd known since he was little, and his parents are good friends of mine. So this is a very personal issue for me. And of course, I am thrilled, beyond ecstatic that any hostages will be released. So I want to say that at the outset, and I don't want to cast any aspersions on the families who have just been existing in a state of torture for 15 months, or anything that they want to do, because I know if it was one of my children, I would be doing exactly what they're doing. But I think there are a lot of things in the deal, at least that have been reported, and I don't even think it's actually been finalized yet, and we certainly don't know all the details. There's only some broad strokes out there. But I think what is most disappointing to me about this deal is that it's only 33 out of 100 hostages, and only 23 live hostages, and the supposed time frame for release is approximately 3 hostages a week, which is outrageous. And in the last hostage release, which took place back a little over a year ago, it was 10 hostages a day or more. So I find this completely unacceptable. Of course, any hostage being released is wonderful, but I think it's outrageous that the international community did not demand that every hostage be released on day one of this agreement.
Well, I mean, yes, you're right. I mean, we're all speculating to a degree, but as you said, you're in Israel, you'd be closer to testing the waters here. I mean, logically, you're right. Logically, it would be a complete, hostage, prisoner swap immediately. One think of these drama movies across the borders where you just literally swap over. Why do you think that's not been the case this time?
Well, I think this is all about Hamas and its nature as a terrorist organization, and it's wanting to torture the families as much as it can and torture Israeli society. So it's 100% about that, and so that is why they are dragging it out as long as possible, and also so that they can make claims if for some reason, as things are proceeding, they're realizing that it's a detriment to them, they can cut things off. So that's clearly why they've dragged this out over 6 weeks. What I cannot understand is, I frankly don't understand why our government agreed to that, And I certainly don't understand why the international community found that acceptable.
Well, I was just going to say that ultimately, whether settlements are made, negotiated in whichever way, ultimately, as any other transaction, it is an agreement between different parties. So however equal or unequal it may be, at the end of the day, if both parties agree to it, well then, so be it. So I hear what you're saying. What, therefore, in your understanding, needs to happen between now and Sunday when the ceasefire actually kicks in?
Well, I think there has to actually be a final agreement. Israeli media has been reporting all day today that there are still details that Hamas is trying to change. So we'll have to see. I don't know what those are. And then the Israeli cabinet has to vote on and accept the agreement. So those things I do not believe have happened yet. So until those things have happened, we can't even say this is a final agreement, even though everyone's been running victory laps about it in the international community.
Okay, so of course, lots of speculation, right?
Yeah.
I understand one of the issues that's come up, and whether it's true or not, we don't know, is like Hamas are actually pushing out for not just the 30 versus 1 swap that we've agreed upon already, but that there has to be some significant high-ranking Hamas officials who are detained, and possibly amongst them someone like I think it's Marwan Barghouti, if anything. Any truth to that? Do you have any sense that may well be the case?
Well, certainly there are a lot of really heinous, vicious terrorists and murderers that are planning to be released. From what I've heard, 2 killers were responsible for butchering a family of 5, including 3 small children and a baby, in 2011 while they were sleeping in their beds. And apparently those 2 monsters are slated to be released. So that's quite disgusting. I don't believe Marwan Barghouti is on the list, but certainly there are a lot of, like I said, vicious murderers that are going to go free. And I think that was one of Hamas's demands, that several of the people who are serving life sentences should get out.
Okay. Now, as you know, I mean, there's this issue. There are many people who have very, very different opinions to maybe the issues you hold or I hold or other people, right? Having said that, if a deal has been struck, and let's take it from your perspective, why, in your opinion, besides the fact that the hostages would be released, so obviously they go back to their families, which is fabulous, right? Besides that part, is it in Israel's interest then to strike a deal to allow their hostages, their citizens, to be released on the one hand, and on the other hand to also have the swap where many Palestinians go the other way, and there's also a withdrawal of Gaza and other issues? But from an Israeli perspective, what's in it for Israel?
I mean, really the only thing it appears to me that's in it for Israel is that we're getting hostages out. But other than that, I don't really see what's in it for Israel at all, because right now the IDF is making tremendous gains in Gaza. Hamas is certainly on the back foot, which is why it even is part of this. Iran is struggling at the moment. Complete axis of quote unquote resistance has been completely decimated by Israel. So from a security perspective and from a strategic perspective, I really don't see anything that Israel has to gain from it, certainly not militarily either, with the exception of the hostages.
Okay. Now, I understand, and again, this is based upon lots of speculation, that this deal, in fact, the terms of this agreement was struck last year already at the time of the Joe Biden administration in the USA. That was not accepted for whatever reason. What are your thoughts about why it's being accepted now by all parties, and specifically as you answer this, your thoughts in the role being played by the USA, the outgoing president of the USA, the incoming president of the USA, Egypt and Qatar, and maybe others that I don't know about?
Well, I think certainly Trump's election is the primary driver. Hamas rejected this deal back in May, and when it was in a much stronger position, Iran was in a much stronger position. But Trump came in and issued a threat that they'll be held to pay if the hostages are not released. So I think that's the number one factor. Biden appears to be also wanting to take some credit so that he can, when he leaves the presidency in a few days, he can have a win under his belt, quote unquote. I think that had a lot to do with it. And I think also the strikes by Israel on Iran after their ballistic missile attack on us and the collapse of the Assad regime, the collapse of Hamas, the collapse of Hezbollah, and the decapitation of Hezbollah and Hamas, Yahya Sinwar, Nasrallah being taken out, I think were also major factors. So Iran is definitely on the back foot, and so I think that's also one of the reasons, because Hamas ultimately takes instructions from Tehran. So I think that certainly has been driving it. And then I'm sure when it comes to Egypt and Qatar, you know, they want to make nice with the incoming Trump administration.
Okay, there's also a sense from
there's
also a sense from others that in fact Trump, who had already said, you know, if nothing gets sorted out by the time I gain the presidency, all hell will break loose. And the point that I want to put forward, you can answer this in one go as we wrap up, right? How much clout does Trump have to effectively, and I use the word force in inverted commas, both parties, very different parties, to come to the negotiating to agree? And as you answer that, here's the last thing. Beyond simply agreeing between these two parties regarding the prisoner hostage swap, right? How do we get to the next level, which is how do we get to a situation of lasting peace in that region?
So I do think there's leverage over Iran and Qatar, and Hamas leaders in Qatar. I don't even know who's running Hamas right now in Gaza. That's very unclear. Trump certainly has leverage over the Israeli government as well. And again, we don't know what's been promised behind the scenes. If there's an acceptance of this agreement from the Israeli side, what that means. So there could be bigger things in store that we just don't know about. With Hamas, again, their patron is Iran. So there is, again, some leverage there by Iran, and Qatar also as a patron to get them to go to the table. So that certainly is operating here. But unfortunately, I think to get to any real lasting peace, it's going to require the complete elimination of Hamas. They cannot be allowed to rule in Gaza again. And that's also going to mean a complete overhaul of the humanitarian aid framework in Gaza and the dismantling of UNRWA.
Okay.
So unless those things happen, there will be no peace.
And Harrisberg, appreciate your time. Legal advisor of the NGO Monitor, based in Israel, of course, the Jerusalem-based Research Institute. That's your thoughts. Thanks for that. We'll get another opinion, in fact, from George Galloway, right after this.
Thank you.
Ashraf Garda on SAFM.
So why should I use We Buy Cars if I want to sell my vehicle?
Because We Buy Cars buys cars.
But will I get the right price?
Of course. We Buy Cars buys thousands of vehicles and knows exactly what every vehicle is worth. Their buyers deliver exceptional service and pay you immediately.
And how do I know what they'll pay for my vehicle?
It's easy. Visit webuycars.co.za or use the We Buy Cars app. Follow the simple steps and voila, you'll get a fantastic price for your car. We Buy Cars. Quick, easy, the best.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda. Weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
Right, it certainly is the National Pulse. What are you feeling right now? What are you feeling about things in South Africa? What are you feeling about things in the Middle East, particularly around Israel, Palestine, Israel, Gaza, and Hamas in terms of where they are? And that ceasefire that's looming, imminent, we think, isn't it? In a matter of a couple of hours, if not days, right? Okay, that's one perspective. I'd like to get your opinion. Let's get another thought on the same issue. And we chat now to George Galloway, who's a British politician, now an independent politician, writer as well, but broadcaster and host of a fabulous YouTube podcast called The Mother of All Talk Shows. I wish I had that title to my show. George, great to connect with you on the National Pulse.
Nice to hear from you. I caught the back end of the voice of Netanyahu through the so-called NGO, and of course it was the usual tissue of falsehoods, and so I'm glad to have the opportunity to counter them if I may.
Well, we're certainly asking you that. Therefore, let's start with the first one. What do you make of what we now understand is an imminent ceasefire?
Well, it's a great victory for President Trump, who forced it. It's a great victory for South Africa, which played such a seminal role in establishing the worldwide condemnation of the crimes of the Netanyahu regime. It's a victory for the Palestinian people and for their resistance, which is steadfast. And as Anthony Blinken said yesterday, not me, Anthony Blinken, is now as strong as it was before this genocide began. So good luck to Tel Aviv if they think that they've said goodbye to the Palestinian resistance. As long as there are 2 Palestinians left alive, there will be a Palestinian resistance. So it's a great victory for all those who marched, who boycotted, who did everything they could in the international system. But of course, one must enter considerable caveats. Listening to the voice of Tel Aviv a minute ago on your show, it's clear that they're going into this with a very ill grace, and so they may well break it, as they've broken hundreds of ceasefire agreements in the past.
Okay, you're saying Israel may break it, or Israel may feel Hamas may break it? Who?
Well, Israel will break it. The Palestinian side has absolutely zero incentive to break it. If the terms of the deal, which we've now all seen, are observed, then we're waking up to a new world in which Palestinian children are not daily massacred.
Right, help us understand when you say it's a victory for the Palestinians. From the time of October 7th, about officially 40,000 odd Palestinians have been killed. Many say much more, they just haven't been counted. They've also had a situation where their land, I'm talking about Gaza specifically, has been opened up to Israeli military occupation in this period. Yes, they're going to get some prisoners that have been imprisoned by Israel back. They would have to hand over the hostages, as has been discussed. Where's the victory for the Palestinians in this?
Well, first of all, the nomenclature should always be checked. Why are they Palestinian prisoners but Israeli hostages? Why aren't they all prisoners, or why aren't they all hostages? The Palestinian people, thousands of them, have been seized by a regime that has been decided by the ICJ, not least thanks to South Africa, as illegally occupying the territory from which they are seizing these people and throwing them behind bars without charge, without trial. And those who have had a trial are tried before military courts, the kind of kangaroo courts that militants in South Africa used to face. So they're all prisoners, so far as I'm concerned, and there's a big prisoner exchange envisioned across the 3 stages of this agreement. And Israel has to withdraw from all of the Gaza territory, all of it.
We'll talk about what happens next in a moment. You refer to victory for incoming President Trump, right? What, in your opinion, do you think he was able to do that all the other parties were not able to do in the last year, considering his statement not even a week ago, I think, or 2, saying, if there's no ceasefire, then all hell will break loose?
Well, the reason why he was able to achieve it is because he tried to. The previous regime, the outgoing regime of Biden and Blinken, the most disgraced politicians ever to leave office in the United States, never tried to get a ceasefire, never tried to force an agreement. Trump made it an article of faith in his campaign, not least on the last 2 days in the state of Michigan, where he promised the people there that he would end the war. And it turns out that the notorious liar, Donald Trump, was the one telling the truth, and the holy Joe Biden that was telling the lies. So we should be grateful that Trump has forced Netanyahu to back down.
Which gets me thinking, what could he have? I mean, he's been very supportive of Israel up to now, Donald Trump, that is, right? Therefore, what could he have told the Israelis, Benjamin Netanyahu and his colleagues, that so convinced them to agree to a deal now? Could he have promised them something more? And what could he have promised Hamas?
Well, time will tell. But my guess is this, that Trump wants to put the arm on the Saudi kings to normalize relations with Israel and some kind of relaunch of the so-called Abraham Accords, which failed miserably in his first term. And the Saudi kings cannot, in any circumstances, normalize relations with Israel as others in the Gulf have done, whilst the women and children in Gaza were being slaughtered. So I think that he wants to clear the deck and use the unusually close relationship that he and his extended family have with the Saudi kings to bring about a reconfiguration of the area.
Okay.
I don't at this stage believe he's offered to attack Iran or any of the other apocalyptic possibilities that are floated. But as I said, time will tell.
Okay, just two things before I let you go. I understand from the U.S. Senate side, or the House passed a bill to impose sanctions against effectively any country, person, people that may be supportive of a position against their great ally Israel. What do you make of that?
I think these things will all begin to atrophy and wither away. Trump is on a different track, and Trump controls the situation in the United States. And any Republican senator, congressman, who is willfully standing in Trump's way will be very lucky to survive the next round of primaries and the elections. So that was yesterday's atmosphere. We must see what Monday's atmosphere will be like. I suspect in this regard, maybe not in others, it will be a better atmosphere.
Okay, George Galloway, here's the last thing, right? So we now have a situation, if it all holds, that we'll have an actual ceasefire on Sunday. There'll be prisoner swaps. There'll be Israelis withdrawing from Gaza, and hopefully there's a sense of euphoria. And there has been even last night. I watched that. But the big question is then, what happens next? How do we get to a position of not just peace, but lasting peace? What needs to happen?
Well, I don't think we're going to get that. I've given up hoping for justice, which is the only underpinning of lasting peace that you can possibly have. No justice, no peace is not just an empty slogan. And as long as Israel is ethnically cleansing the West Bank, as long as it is still establishing illegal settlements on other people's land, whether Palestinian land in the West Bank and Jerusalem, or Syrian land on Mount Hermon, for example, as long as it is continuing its policy of seeking a greater and greater Israel, by which they mean bigger and bigger Israel at other people's expense, there will be no peace. So I see this as a welcome interregnum. I hope it lasts long. At the very least, on Monday, no women and children will be separated from their heads by 2,000-pound American bombs dropping on their tents.
And that's where we shall leave it. Let's see what happens. That lasting peace, or that point that George Galloway spoke about being elusive, and I'm suggesting we need to have the sense of absolute justice as a precursor to sustained peace, is what we need to look out for next. George Galloway, appreciate your time. Politician, activist in many ways, and the host of the mother of all talk shows, and of course a Manchester United football supporter. Is probably happy about that in the last week or so. Thanks for your time, George. Let's get now to the news headlines. Here's Ondela Mbana.
Thank you, Ashraf. In the news headlines, the Johannesburg Stock Exchange and government are discussing the possibility of listing state-owned enterprises as part of their expanding partnership to grow and develop the economy. Northwest Acting Police Commissioner Patrick Asaneng has confirmed that all the illegal miners at the Belfastfontein mine in Saltfontein have been successfully evacuated. And the Judicial Conduct Tribunal, probing sexual harassment allegations against Judge President Selby Mbenenge, has heard that the top judge allegedly persisted in sexual advances towards the complainant despite her rejecting the request multiple times. A full update follows at the top of the hour.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the R59 northbound in Alberton has delays on the link to the N12 West at Reading Interchange. And Rietfontein Road in Boksburg has a crash reported between Madley Road and North Rand Road. In KZN, on the N3, a lost load recovery underway. That's near Van Breenen Village, with traffic control measures in place at the scene, so you're asked to expect delays. And Umgeni Road westbound, slow moving through Springfield Park. In the Free State, on the N3, truck crash recovery south of Warden, so expect delays there. And in Limpopo, on the R518, flooding reported at the Tamboti River Bridge. In Cape Town, the M3 northbound queuing at Paradise Road. Peyton Cross Street outbound is slow moving towards the elevated freeway. Strand Street outbound, slow moving towards High Level Road. Kloofneck Road outbound is slow moving through Tamboerskloof. And Victoria Road outbound, slow moving through Woodstock. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
This is SAFM Sports with Tuming Khapele.
Right, Tumi, there's lots of cricket in South Africa, but the rugby teams are playing where, home and abroad, right?
Yeah, home and abroad, and it's do or die for 5 South African franchises that are competing in the Champions Cup and EPCR Challenge Cup competitions this weekend as the pool stage reaches a close. The Sharks and Stormers, who are both in 4th place in their pools, will have one last chance to book playoff spots in the Champions Cup, while the Emirates Lions and Toyota Cheetahs, both ranked 5th in their groups, will be under a lot of pressure to get wins to keep their EPCR Challenge Cup playoffs hopes alive. Meanwhile, in terms of the Bulls, they will wrap up their 2024-25 Champions Cup campaign after dropping out of the race following their defeat last week, although they can still sneak into the EPCR Challenge Cup playoffs. In football, Kaizer Chiefs Sporting Director Kaizer Motaung Jr. has assured the club's number of fans that they are hard at work behind the scenes trying to strengthen the team in the current transfer window. Now, Motaung's assurance comes at a time when Chiefs fans have grown impatient with what they perceive to be a slow approach from the club in this current transfer window, and he insists that they are looking at signing a couple of players.
I think it's always a sensitive topic because we would love as a team to be able to be transparent and speak to the people. I mean, our people and the fans are the most important people and stakeholder, and we respect them tremendously highly. And I really want to just take away this connotation that the club is not doing anything, the club does not respect its supporters. They are everything to us. You know, we do everything for them, and it would be foolish for us not to be doing anything in this window. You know, we've got to respect the players that we do have, give them the confidence for them to be able to do the job in the field, but we are very much aware of the areas that we need to strengthen. You know, we've been working tirelessly every day with the technical staff, with the management, with the committee to make sure that we make the right decisions, you know, and we obviously have been engaged with many clubs, with many players.
And perhaps, Ashraf, it speaks a lot to the process that's involved in buying a player, because there's a lot that goes in. It's quite unfortunate that fans tend to think that it's easy to just buy a player, but there's a lot of negotiations in terms of how much a player costs. Does the other team agree to the amount of the player?
Does the player want to
come?
Do
you have the budget? Does the player want to come? There's a lot that comes into play in terms of buying a player. It's just that fans think it's very easy to just buy a player.
But do you think fans think that, or they realize it's complex?
I wonder. I just feel like perhaps the Kaizer Chiefs fans are just tired right now. They just want
Maybe they're
a cup of
tired
tea.
because they may be buying the wrong player. So when you get your recruitment wrong, that's what I've said. Kaizer Chiefs, Manchester United, what's the difference? So that could well be the case, but it's clearly a lot more complicated to buy a player or to transfer in or out than to do a substitution, you know, at grounds where people just, you know, swing their arms over where they feel like, come on, let's make the swap. It doesn't happen. It's a lot more difficult. Yeah.
Well, talking about the transfer window, Ipswich announced the signing of winger Jayden Philogene from Aston Villa on a 4.5-year deal for a reported fee of around £22 million, which is 504 million rand. The 22-year-old is the club's second edition of the January transfer, following the arrival of Ben Godfrey on loan from Atlanta. The under-21 international rejoined Villa from Hull on a long-term deal in the summer transfer transfer window but has struggled to command a regular place in Unai Emery's side and will now hope to kickstart his career at Portman Road. In cricket, Joburg Super Kings will be aiming to collect more points in the Gauteng Derby against the Pretoria Capitals at the Wanderers Stadium this evening. JSK level on points with the Royals on 8 points to be joined second place. And here is JSK captain Faf du Plessis ahead of the clash.
Just a noise. I feel like Wanderers is the loudest stadium in South Africa, so when there's a lot of people, you can feel the noise. It feels like everyone is on top of you, almost like a coliseum, where the Warriors come out of play. So it's a great place when there's a lot of people.
In tennis, defending Australian Open champion Jannik Sinner is through to the third round of the tournament after a 4-6, 6-4, 6-1 and 6-3 victory over Tristan Schoolgate. This win marks his 16th consecutive victory and he next faces Marcos Giron. And finally, in golf, Rory McIlroy has hailed Liv Golf's decision to appoint Scott O'Neill as the new CEO following Greg Norman's departure as a positive step. Liv Golf announced that Norman would be stepping down from his role at the helm of the controversial golf series, with O'Neill set to take the reins. On that note, it is a wrap from my side. I'll have more in the next hour.
Okay, more transfer talk, if anything, but can Chiefs get it right? I mean, that's the million-dollar question. More sport in an hour, yeah.
We definitely know what good insurance is. Our insurance don't delay when it comes to any claims. If something happens to one of our vehicles on the road, service delivery is the main thing.
They make sure that you are a satisfied customer from the beginning to the end.
It's definitely a win-win with our insurance.
Switch to Business Outsurance today and you could get a massive 20% discount on your business insurance premium. SMS quote to 43328. That's quote to 43328 to switch and save today. Licensed insurer and FSP. TCs and information online.
Are you looking for the best spectacle and sunglass deal? With Specsavers buy one get one offer, you get great value for money. You know you can trust us with over 350 stores nationwide. Get a free pair of branded prescription sunglasses up to 3,200 Rand when you purchase a comprehensive eye test and spectacle frame with lenses on your first pair. Choose from top brands like Police, Hugo, Tommy Hilfiger, Carolina Herrera and more. There really is no reason to go anywhere else. Affordable eye care, Specsavers. T's and C's apply.
If you think you cannot afford a lawyer, think again. Clientele Legal has made professional legal services affordable for you. Whether it's a civil, criminal, or labor-related matter, we have a nationwide panel of attorneys standing by to assist you. SMS SAFM to 32195. That's SAFM to 32195 and we'll call you back. Clientele General is a licensed non-life insurer and an authorized FSP. Standard rates and terms and conditions apply.
I feel great. I feel nice.
Kasha, what's the score? We're coiling on the highest, the summer level. What's the score? It's the Nandi sessions with Mr. Showdem. It's the fa of live music. It's the go on SABC Plus. Catch the JR Feel Good sessions at 6 Fridays only on SABC 1. Mzansi for sure.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda. Weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
Right, as you know, we've done some tweaking to our program, which means that every day around 10 to the hour, so 10 to 4, 10 to 5, 10 to 6 generally, that's where we will have a whole runway of your audience engagement. I talk to you, I listen, I check out your WhatsApps, read some of your text messages and all that sort of thing. So that comes up. So the conversation I had with two significant voices regarding Israel and Palestine, or Israel and Hamas, is who we spoke to earlier on. What do you make of that? George Galloway is who we chatted to after the initial conversation we had from a representative from Israel. I wonder what you make of that and what you think about what the things they've said and agreed or disagreed. I'm talking about Anne Hertzberg and then George Galloway. Feel free to give me your comments, and perhaps as you do that, answer this question, which is I've asked them, which is how do you attain a lasting peace in that region? I suppose the same could well apply. How you attain a very cordial, chummy relationship between the USA and Cuba. They've been at Cold Wars of sort for a long time. So as we now get to the last few days of the Biden administration, remember, 20th is when Trump literally trumps the others. We now have a situation that the USA has announced plans to ease Cuban sanctions. And that's been ongoing for a long time. What does that really mean? What's the backstory to all of that? And how then does the Cuban respond to that? With me is Brian Betancourt-Brito, who's the third secretary for political affairs at the Cuban embassy in South Africa. Thank you for your time, Brian. Appreciate you connecting with us.
Good afternoon. Yes, good afternoon, you all.
Much appreciated. First, tell us what's happened here. We talk about this plan to ease Cuba's sanctions. That means sanctions against Cuba by the USA. What is your understanding of it?
Well, basically, we believe that the United States took steps in the right direction, but the blockade, of course, remained in force. The Biden administration took 3 measures. The biggest one, we believe, is the removal of Cuba from the State Department list of countries that allegedly sponsor terrorism. We believe that this is the right thing to do because it's the recognition of the truth. The inclusion of Cuba in that list have been politically motivated. We were included in the 80s, and then Obama removed us from the list, and then we were included again in 2021. So the inclusion of Cuba in this particular list has been have been consequences for our people, especially economic consequences, financial consequences, that of course have strengthened the power of the blockade.
So how do things change here? Because I mean, you're quite right. There were sanctions, then there was easing, then it's been brought back. And I remember you talked about the Obama administration. I certainly remember Obama meeting Fidel Castro, if I'm not mistaken, in South Africa. In fact, an unprecedented meeting of sorts. What turned that around to become a lot more difficult after that, and what has changed this time around?
Well, in 2017, if I can back in time, it is important to point out that the economic blockade and a large part of the tens of coercive measures entered into force since 2017 to further strengthen, and it will remain in force with the full extraterritorial impact and in violation of international law and the human rights of all Cubans.
How much do you see this as Joe Biden? I mean, we've just heard about the Israel-Gaza deal, Israel-Hamas deal. How do you see the gain as, a presidency on the last legs trying to show a more humane face, and notwithstanding the fact that Cuba benefits from it, clearly?
No, as I mentioned before, we believe the United States administration took steps in the right direction, that it is known that the government of that country could reverse in the future the measures that have been adopted, and has already happened in the past, because the inclusion of Cuba in this unilateral list have been always politically motivated. That's why they will not take time to find justifications as long as the government continues to be unable to recognize or accept Cuba's right to self-determination.
And this removal of Cuba from the U.S. terror list, was this negotiated, or was it, in your understanding, something that the Americans decided?
Well, we believe the truth won in this particular case, because what the U.S. administration did was to recognize that Cuba do not sponsor terrorism. This is clear and the absolute truth, that Cuba does not support terrorism in any of its ways. So we believe that also it remains it's important to highlight the solidarity that we received from foreign, from the rest of the world, the solidarity we received, especially from South Africans. We would like to express our gratitude to all the countries, but of course we would like to take the stage to highlight that a few days ago, during the ANC anniversary celebration, President Ramaphosa expressed his party decision to demand the removal of Cuba from the list.
Okay, lastly, sorry, continue.
And through the past years, we also received a lot of support from COSATU, for example, and its affiliates, and especially from the South African Communist Party, who have contributed to visualize the issue in the country. So we need to say that the solidarity, the world has pushing also the Biden administration to make this right step in the right direction, as I mentioned.
Okay, and just lastly, in the light of what's happened or what is going to happen, how then do you see the diplomatic relations between the two countries changing, and then economic relations too?
Well, I believe it's complicated to predict the future, but what I can tell you is what will Cuba will do. Cuba will continue to face and condemn the blockade, the foreign interference programs, and the disinformation and discredit operation financed every year with U.S. federal budget. So we want good relations, of course, with the United States. I believe Cuba have shown in the past his will and his disposition to make a civilized dialogue with the Americans authorities.
Okay.
So I believe the ball is not in our court.
Okay, perfect. Let's leave it at that. The ball not in your court, and that's from Brian Battencourt Brito, the third secretary for political affairs, in fact, at the Cuban embassy in South Africa. Any comments about Cuba? Let's hear it. Whatever it is you want to get off your chest, what for you moves the national pulse? I think this is a global pulse issue in terms of Israel and Hamas overnight, and we've got the podcast of the two guests we've had. You can listen to the podcast of Ann Hadsberg and George Galloway as well, but I'll take your thoughts, your comments right after this.
After a 1-0 draw in Morocco during the first 90 minutes, Masandawana and the leader are both hungry to wrap up the group campaign with a win. The South locks horns with the North. This is the Total Energies CAF Champions League. Witness the thrilling flavor of African football. Mamelodi Sundowns FC versus AS Farabat FC on Sunday, 19 January at 5:30 p.m. Live on SABC 1 and SABC radio stations. Also available everywhere for everyone, always on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Hey, you know what, South Africa? We're just not talking about enough.
Excuse me?
Use it liberally. Use it early. Use it with your folks.
Hey, careful, young lady.
Yes, it'll be awkward at first, but not quite as awkward as your tidy-whitey wearing father-in-law spending his golden years on your couch. Wouldn't you agree? Finances is not a dirty word. Let's start talking about it, Mzansi. Find out how at livewithconfidence.co.za. Sanlam. Sanlam Life is a licensed life insurer, financial services, and registered credit provider.
The SAFM Playwriting Competition is closing on the 3rd of February 2025. Explore the theatre of the mind and write your 60-minute radio drama play and email it before 5 p.m. on the 3rd of February 2025. Late submissions will not be accepted. For further information about the competition, visit safm.co.za or send an email to drama@safm.co.za. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us. The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda. Weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
Okay, let's get your thoughts. Mampejo in Limpopo, you want to talk about Israel. Go ahead.
Ashraf.
Yeah, thanks for calling in.
Thanks for bringing these speakers on the radio.
Well, I must say, well done to my team. It's a production team, Temban Keys, that puts it all together. And I must, hats off to them, really.
Great job.
Yeah.
Great job. I don't believe Hamas is a terrorist organization. Let me put the scenario like in South Africa during apartheid. We had political parties like ANC, ASAP, and so on. They were forced to have their own military wing, which was fighting the government. When the apartheid government decided to negotiate in 1990, all these political parties disbanded their military wings. So the easiest way and the fastest way of doing away with Hamas is for Israel to accede to two-state solution. Palestinians are people, they deserve to have their own country where they can have their own constitution, their own soldiers and police. Currently, Palestine is like a big prison. So Hamas is forced to do whatever it has done, which I don't condone. I condemn it, but they are forced because Israel is oppressing them like we were oppressing apartheid in South Africa.
Okay.
In fact, it is Israel that must be called a terrorist state. How many people Israel has assassinated in different countries? How many international laws Israel has violated?
Okay.
It's a terrorist state Israel itself.
Right. Okay, Mampejo got that, and of course, and I understand that as I talk to you, many people have very, very different views about that position, but certainly Mampejo very clear, drawing on the parallels of Hamas and what's happened in South Africa when the political parties effectively were banned and stripped of their rights to protest, and they took certain actions. I wonder what do you make of that. But I mean, here's the broader issue that I really want to talk about regarding Israel and Hamas or Palestine. What do you make of the ceasefire? And how do we attain lasting peace? So I'm not saying don't ever talk about the past. I often do. But maybe for the purpose of today, it may be better if we just say focus on the ceasefire and focus on how do we attain a lasting peace in that region. I'd love to know. Mark in Durban, go for it.
Thank you, Mr. Ashraf. I'll be quick.
Thank you.
So firstly, that Anne is the most dumbest woman you've ever had on this show. You can see she's one-sided. You can see where she comes. This is the problem, where you're going to have people like that saying things that is going to make Israel, continue doing what they are doing. And this is where you're going to have that bottleneck. George is very fair. His comment is fair. The Israelis are the terrorists. We have to know that because they're illegally occupying the place. Now, the ceasefire, I'll come to that, but you are very smart. You are biased, which is rightfully so. But remember where you come from, Ashraf. We have been all through this apartheid regime, and Israel is apartheid. So when you interview, you must be more leaning towards and be sympathetic to the.
No, but I really don't, Mark. I'm losing you here. You know, you're very smart. You must be more biased, and you must be leaning. I really don't understand what you're trying to say. You know, I have a position in terms of what I feel about human rights issues, but you can't actually tell me this is how I must conduct the interview with this person. You don't know what we're planning, and there's dynamics about interviews that you have no idea about. It's like saying, get a player to play on a football field, and they're going to have a free run to score a try. It just does not work that way, Mark. I'm going to leave it at that. Just does not work that way, really. It's a lot more complicated than that, I can assure you. Henry and Harry Smith, go for it.
Hey, Ashraf, how's it, man?
I'm very good indeed. Go for it, Henry.
Hey, Ashraf, the situation in Palestine, it won't come to an end because of I said to, I don't remember that person, that broadcaster. I told him that these guys have got a long-term plan with Palestine, actually with Middle East. There was a person who was called UNOM. UNOM made a plan that they want to control the whole Middle East.
But can I ask you this? I mean, look, I'm interjecting you, and I apologize in advance. I just want to ask you, just for the purpose of today, can we, if possible, focus on the ceasefire? What is your understanding of the ceasefire, and can the ceasefire be a precursor to actual lasting peace? I mean, are you able to give me your thoughts on that?
That's from Ashraf. It starts from the UNOM plan. The ceasefire, these guys are building. If you build, you put a brick, you put a cement, you put a brick, you put a cement, you put exactly what is happening. That's exactly what is happening in the Middle East. These guys want to control the whole Middle East. So they are not yet done. According to what I see now, they are not yet done. There's still going to be more. Their intention is to rebuild the whole Middle East, Beirut, rebuild Philistine.
Okay.
After that, control it. There will be no.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, Henry, got that? I mean, that's clearly your opinion, and I accept, as I talk to you, there are different people who have very, very different opinions on that issue, as they would probably have about the way our country is run anyway. Kirk in Cape Town, go for it.
Hello, Ashraf.
Yeah, Kirk.
I'm very glad to hear and see the ceasefire announcement. I think the only way that the ceasefire could last is if there are compromises from both sides. The prisoners have to be returned, and Israel has to leave the settlements and give land back to the Palestinians. That is the only way that I can see it working.
Okay.
Anything else is going to be a failure.
Well, I'll tell you what, you raised something that I'd love to know what others think about. Kirk, thank you for that. And maybe that's the point I'm talking about now. If we're going to talk about this, let's just focus on the ceasefire. What is your understanding of the terms of that ceasefire, favorable, unfavorable to whichever one of the two, between Israel and Hamas, and whether the ceasefire would be a precursor to stopping the fight now, but can it actually save the peace? Are we able to do just that? Clearly, there are more comments. Let's hear it.
Wow, Ashraf. Maybe filter your guest a little bit more, because I don't know if there was a single statement out of this woman's mouth that wasn't pure bias.
Well, as you've heard, that's why we had two sides to a position. Very intentionally, as a production team, we got two sides from Anne Herzog and then George Galloway. And I hear what you're saying. I have my opinions. Clearly, you have yours, and so does the rest of the audience.
Afternoon, Ashraf. I understand the ceasefire between Palestine and Israel. My question is Israel going to withdraw from all the occupied Palestinian land? Because without that, there will never be peace. There will never be eternal peace until Israel withdraws from all occupied Palestinian land. Norman from Brixton.
Thanks for that, Norman. Someone have suggested, and I've spoken about it often, like what happened at the time of the Balfour Declaration. It's something just to visit in terms of root causes of problems in any hotspots in the world, in this case, the Middle East. Right, there'll be more to come. There's a lot more to come. We'll take your calls. We'll take your thoughts. Anything that you think moves the national pulse. Let's get the news now. It's 4 o'clock. Here's Ondela Mbana.
Thank you, Ashraf. Top stories. JSE discusses the possibility of listing state-owned enterprises, and BP confirms plans to cut thousands of jobs. For SAFM News, I am Ondela Mbana, and a very good afternoon. The Johannesburg Stock Exchange and government are discussing the possibility of listing state-owned enterprises as part of their expanding partnership to grow and develop the economy. The two parties say other areas of potential collaboration include the establishment of a township stock exchange and investment into the carbon market. Minister of Planning, Monitoring and Evaluation in the Presidency, Marubeni Ramokgopa, attended a meeting at the JSE where potential public-private partnerships in policy development topped the agenda.
Before, it used to just be that SOEs are just government-controlled and governed. But now that we are coming up with a bill that is already in Parliament, we are really hoping that by the end of February, the process that is the last leg of public participation will be finalized. That would allow us to then now start saying that SOEs can actually be listed, whereas before they were not part of that. So the process of ensuring that our SOEs are based on market orientation has already started. It's for this reason that we came here as well, and they are going to assist us to come up with policies and frameworks that would allow us to do a better job.
Northwest Acting Police Commissioner Patrick Asaneng has confirmed that all the illegal miners at the Bafokeng mine in Stilfontein have been successfully evacuated. On Monday, police in the province, along with 9 rescue services, entered the third and final phase to retrieve illegal miners. Rescue volunteers conducted a final sweep of the mine shafts this morning. 246 illegal miners resurfaced and 78 bodies were retrieved this week. Briefing the media in Stilfontein, Asaneng said Operation Vala Umgodi would continue.
There are no longer people alive or corpses that are still underground to be extracted. We consulted with the mine rescue services, who assured us that today they will also do their own mop-up operations. Insofar as the operation is concerned, we are continuing not only at 11 Shaft but in all the areas where illegal mining is taking place.
ANC military veteran and retired Major General of the South African Defence Force Keith Mokgwape has passed away at the age of 77. Mokgwape, who was a veteran of the South Africa's liberation struggle and former Chief of Military Intelligence of the African National Congress Military Wing, Umkhonto weSizwe, passed away peacefully this morning at the Nedcare Waterfall Hospital in Midrand. Major General Mokgwape is also remembered being a founding member of the South African Students' Organization. The ANC Veterans League has expressed its condolences, describing his concern for the plight of former MK soldiers as legendary. He was honored with the Order of Luthuli in silver by President Cyril Ramaphosa in 2018. He is survived by his wife and their 2 children. The Judicial Conduct Tribunal probing sexual harassment allegations against Judge President Selby Mbenenge has heard that the top judge allegedly persisted in sexual advances towards the complainant despite her rejecting the request multiple times. Andiswa Mengo accuses the top judge of sexual harassment during the period of June 2021 to November 2022 in the form of in-person interaction and electronic communication. Day 4 of the hearing saw evidence leader Advocate Salome Skippers go through the top judge's alleged request for intimacy in the WhatsApp exchanges between the judge and Mengo, which Mengo rejected at least 4 times. The tribunal heard that she rejected the alleged request by sending a Bible verse with the term hayi, which means no. Mengo explains why.
This particular verse, I saw it suitable. That was then my way of assurance to him that that which he asked me is not going to happen.
Oil giant BP has confirmed that it will cut about 4,700 staff worldwide, more than 5% of its total workforce, as part of its plans to cut costs. The British firm, which has a global workforce of about 19,000 people, has not said how many roles will be affected in each country it operates. An email to staff also confirmed that about 3,000 contractor positions will be axed this year. BP employs about 16,000 people in the UK, of which about 6,000 are based in petrol and service stations and will not be affected by the cuts. Recapping the top story, the Johannesburg Stock Exchange and government are discussing the possibility of listing state-owned enterprises as part of their expanding partnership to grow and develop the economy. I am Ondilambala for SAFM News. Headlines at 4:30.
In sports this hour, tickets for FIFA Club World Cup playoffs and finals go on sale, and Gerda Steyn determined to reclaim her national title. More details at 4:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the M1 southbound in central Johannesburg, slow moving towards Crown Interchange. Witkoppen Road, westbound in Magaliesig, is slow moving towards Main Road, and Solomon Mhlangu Drive southbound in Pretoria, queuing at the N4 highway. In KZN, on the N3, lost load recovery underway near Van Rieenen Village, with traffic control measures at the scene, so expect delays. The M4 northbound is slow moving towards Umhlanga Rocks Drive and Umgeni Road westbound, slow moving through Springfield Park. In the Free State, on the N3, truck crash recovery south of Warden, so expect delays. In Limpopo, the R518 has flooding reported at the Tamboti River Bridge. And Cape Town, the M5 southbound slow moving towards Kromboom Road exit. The M3 southbound is slow moving towards Rhodes Drive, and Albert Road slow moving through Woodstock. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
After a 1-0 draw in Morocco during the first 90 minutes, Masandawana and the leader are both hungry to wrap up the group campaign with a win. The South locks horns with the North. This is the Total Energies CAF Champions League. Witness the thrilling flavor of African football. Mamelodi Sundowns FC versus AS Farabat FC on Sunday, 19 January at 5:30 p.m. Live on SABC1 and SABC radio stations. Also available everywhere, for everyone, always on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
The SAFM Playwriting Competition is closing on the 3rd of February 2025. Explore the theatre of the mind and write your 60-minute radio drama play and email it before 5 p.m. on the 3rd of February 2025. Late submissions will not be accepted. For further information about the competition, visit safm.co.za or send an email to drama@safm.co.za. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us. The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m.
So certainly the first hour of the show had a very much a global feel, but as we know, what happens between, in the Middle East has a huge impact on the world and therefore the position of the USA too. So we'll talk about that and a whole lot of other things as well. Whatever you feel you want to get off your chest, feel free to do that. If you want to comment on the Israel-Hamas issue, I'm just suggesting for the purpose of today, focus on what you make of the terms of the ceasefire. Will the ceasefire hold? And will that be a precursor to lasting peace if you can? But there's more. There are issues of schools, with the South African school year underway, and again, people battling to get places. There's big issues in Gauteng. There's a World Economic Forum breakfast ahead of... There's a World Economic Forum breakfast ahead of that move to Davos next week, which we will certainly touch on. And you know about this one, Cape Town, in terms of a popular vote from around the world being named the best city in the world. I'm talking about Time Out magazine, so very much an adventure magazine. The best city in the world. Really, what do we make of that? We'll chat to the Cape Town mayor coming up later on. Now, there's further comment from you, and one of them is about Donald Trump.
Good afternoon, SAFM and the fellow listeners. Regarding Trump, he better do himself a favor. He better not start anything against South Africa. He better not. Because if he thinks economically he can put sanctions and do as he please and be a bully, I got news for him. He's not going to sit in that chair for a very long time. I can guarantee that. And some people, they understand what do I mean exactly. As for those illegal miners underground and those smallanyana fish that were caught and then now they are called the kingpins, we need to know who is buying the gold. Who are they handing the gold to? And when I look there in parliament and provincial legislatures and some of these big companies, some people are involved. So journalists, start digging. We need to know.
Okay, there we are. You certainly have set the agenda for all of us. Thank you for that. Right. Further comments later on. Let's get to another issue that is very, very much agenda setting. It's the issue of the much discussed Bella Bill, or now the Bella Act. Now, you know that. That was the bill. Then there was a stalling where effectively government left out certain clauses and saying they will revisit those clauses to get, unanimity on that. We understand that bill then was passed as an act, my understanding, in totality just before the holiday break, right? So now AfriForum, together with Solidarity and the Solidarity Support Center for Schools, have started with legal action against the promulgation of the Bella Act. So why are they doing this? What would be their end goal? Let's find out from Kali Kriel, who speaks on behalf of AfriForum. Kali, as always, good to connect with us here on the National Pulse.
Yeah, good day to you, Ashraf. It's great speaking to you again.
Thank you. So help us understand this. When the bill was then promulgated into an act, as an act of law, just before the holiday break, did that catch you by surprise?
Yes, it most definitely did, especially because from AfriForum and Solidarity side and the Solidarity movement, we had numerous discussions with the ANC. We communicated with the Government of National Unity's clearinghouse. We also had our colleagues at Solidarity had negotiations with the presidency as well as the Minister of Basic Education at NEDLAC, and an agreement was reached there that said the proposal would be that certain sections of the Act will not be promulgated until norms and standards have been developed And even the Minister of Basic Education acknowledged that there aren't sufficient norms and standards to be able to implement those sections of the Act. And that was our understanding. And now it creates, well, in the first place, we believe we were misled in these discussions. But secondly, it creates quite a dangerous situation where you can have anti-Afrikaans elements such as Premier Lesufi or MEC Chiluane that goes ahead and abuses their power, in this case, without norms and standards to give some guidance that would prevent abuse of power. And that is for us.
Let me just interject you on that. I mean, when you say, I understand Lesufi's position, but when you say, or Chiluane as well, but when you say anti-Afrikaans elements, that suggests they have a very specific anti-so-and-so position. Why do you say that?
Well, one can just go to record what Mr. Lesufi has said previously, what Mr. Chiluane has said. You know, when Soltec became in the news, that's the Afrikaans Artisan Training College that is part of the Solidarity Movement and the Academia University. Mr. Lesufi said there's no place for such an Afrikaans institution in the country. He's on record with that. Mr. Chiluane said that there's no place for a single medium school in Gauteng. So their intentions are clear, and therefore the Act and the regulations and norms and standards should make sure that you cannot have people that drive a strong political agenda against this, the Afrikaans-speaking community, to just get free rein to do what they want. And therefore, this is for us very serious, and that is why we are now going ahead with legal action.
Okay, but now what's complicated in this? I mean, and you've made your case about Lesufi and the MEC for Education in Gauteng, but the current government that actually passed the Bella Bill into an act, right, is a government of national unity that transcends many different political parties, including, for example, the DA and many others who've been speaking a very different language around the Bella, and language is an interesting point there, around the Bella Act. So my point is that your challenge, therefore, can't just be against Lesufi. It's against government. It's what you see as the entire government making decisions that you don't quite agree with.
Yes, most definitely. We are not connected to any specific political party. We fight for civil rights, and irrespective of who the government is, if they infringe on the rights of communities, we will take them on. The fact is, what we have seen now with this going ahead is that the government of national unity is actually a government of national disunity. And I think the danger that the DA and the Freedom Front Plus would have to think about is that the ANC is managing to co-opt them simply to continue to implement ANC policy. Bella is ANC policy. And the ANC has 40% of the vote, but they were able to go through ahead of with it without changing anything. And I think that is the danger for any party in the government of national unity. They must be aware of the fact that they can be co-opted, and hopefully they will take a strong stance also against the way that this was promulgated.
Okay, I understand you've given government, 10 days or 2 weeks to do, well, let me get clarity. You've given them 10 days or 2 weeks to do what?
Well, to come forth with some kind of remedy for the situation. They can come with proposals, but what could happen, for instance, is that a clear directive can be sent out by the Minister of Basic Education saying that the implementation cannot be done until norms and standards are developed. Of course, that is not as strong as what the proclamation would have been. But then you'll also have to have the political will. You would have somebody like the president willing to stand up against those elements in his party that simply will go ahead implementing this without norms and standards. So it's partially a political solution, and partially administrative in terms of a directive being issued by the minister.
Okay, some may say, in fact, I mean, as you know, that these norms will be developed and they're going to take some while. It's not like we've seen the results of the acts now immediately in the school year. That could take a while. But having said that, if they don't accede to your request stroke demand, right, then you talk of legal action. Explain what is the nature of this legal action?
Yes, there are various routes that we are going to follow, but our first on the agenda would be to go to court showing that the proclamation is irrational. And the reason why we say it is irrational, because the Minister of Basic Education in her own proposals to the President said that this act cannot be promulgated, those sections, because there's an absence of clear norms and standards. So that's an acknowledgement by the government that it actually cannot be done. So for the President to simply go ahead is irrational, and we believe we have strong grounds on that. And then, of course, later down the line, one can look at specifically the wording of the Act and the Act itself. But our case now, it's quite urgent, because we need to make sure that you cannot have people, officials that are politically driven, that now abuses the fact that there aren't sufficient norms and standards guiding them in the process.
And just to be clear, in conclusion, when we talk about these, you have these different options from legal challenge. I mean, what would be the actual legal case that you would state forward? Meaning, what would you be doing?
Well, I think you're going to say that the proclamation was unlawful, and it is unlawful on the grounds that it was irrational, that you cannot promulgate an act or sections of an act that doesn't have the underlying norms and standards. So that is the gist of the action. But of course, there's also agreements that that government did not stick to, and quite a number of other arguments. But this would be the main argument in this first case.
Okay, government's got 10 days or 2 weeks to respond to you. Kali Kriel, thanks for your time. CEO of AfriForum. AfriForum and other aligned organizations not happy with the position that the Bala Bill went into an act of law without any changes, to accept it in totality. And they feel that's just completely wrong. What do you make of that? That's another big issue, the Bala Bill. We'll talk about, would you believe it? We'll talk about TikTok. I'm serious right after this.
Owning a small or medium-sized business takes courage, skill, and determination. The Clientele Legal Business Plan is there to protect, guide, and assist your business in managing the legal risks. Let us handle your labor matters, employment contracts, CCMA referrals, and so much more. Our team of professional lawyers are standing by to assist you. SMS SAFM to 42770. That's SAFM to 42770. Clientele General is an authorized FSP and licensed non-life insurer. T's and C's online. Standard rates apply.
Defending champions Bayer Leverkusen want to stay close to the log leaders, while Borussia Mönchengladbach are navigating a path to the top four. This is the Bundesliga. Football as it's meant to be. Catch Bayer Leverkusen versus Borussia Mönchengladbach on Saturday, 18 January at 7:30 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available at your fingertips on SABC Plus. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
All our esteemed educators, a warm welcome back to school for the year 2025 calendar year. SACE, your professional regulatory body, wishes you an incredible and successful year ahead. Thank you for achieving quality, outstanding 2024 results across all school grades. Continue to inspire a credible and agile teaching profession in and outside your school environment. Your worth and dignity are valued. SAFM values your views. Be an active citizen.
Right, we're going to talk TikTok in a moment, but there's comments from you around AfriForum and the Bala Act. Here it is.
The truth of the matter is AfriForum, it represents African supremacy, nothing else. So let us not be fooled by these people saying civil rights, yada, yada, yada. It's about African supremacy. It's about whatever Africans African RSA must go, and it should never be challenged in any way, and it should never include anyone. It's all about that. That is what AfriForum represents.
Hi, Ashraf. I'm listening to your conversation, and I heard your comment regarding the passing of the bill. No, this bill was not passed by the GNU. It was passed before the election by the ANC government, let's be honest. And then remember the DA was contesting it, and then there were a negotiation discussion behind closed doors, which eventually there was some agreement, I would like to believe, which I don't know the contents, and then it was implemented. So, but to say it was passed by the GNU, I think it's wrong to say. So just for correction's sake, it's Lucky from Paarl in the Western Cape.
Really? So when was it voted on in Parliament? I mean, just you tell me. Okay, let's talk about TikTok now. So here we are. TikTok is this app that started off as this, this fun thing for kids, for lighty kids who are going to make some noise and have some dudding sounds. But it's quickly morphed into something far more formidable, to the point there are certain countries who are not happy with its growth in terms of its spreading its messaging. One of them is the USA. Now, according to my understanding, at this point in time, TikTok needs to shut down on Sunday. This is like the day before Trump takes over, unless he's got other ideas, okay? Which means 170 million users of TikTok in the USA would not have it. What exactly is the story behind that? What are the implications? Brandon Peterson is with me, the tech editor of Reframed. Brandon, good to connect with you. Hi.
Hi, Ashraf. How are you doing?
Thank you. I'm good indeed. Right. What's the issue? Why would TikTok be shut down in the USA?
So what the U.S. government is saying is that this is a national security concern. Essentially, they're concerned about the Chinese government having too much influence, not only over the app, but access to data that they can get and mine from the users of the platform.
Okay, and I mean, give me an example of when they talk about the Chinese government needing to know everything that you know. How is that possible? Explain that.
So with the way a lot of the Chinese companies, especially the tech companies, operate, it's alleged that the Chinese government is essentially demanded that with all the tech companies, got either a backdoor or, if they ask for any sort of information, the companies have to, by law, hand over anything that the Chinese government asks for. So the U.S. government is saying, because of that sort of undue political interference, that this is a concern and an issue of national security for the United States.
Okay, so on that basis, the response has come from the USA, and the US government has actually banned it, right? Any chance? How is that fitted? Firstly, from a purely freedom of expression point of view.
Well, this is the argument that they just had recently in court, because there was the possibility of a sort of mainstay, maybe a pause in the ban, maybe another option for TikTok to be able to sell to, a U.S. owner, which is the same story we had a couple of years ago when the first time we heard about this potential ban. But TikTok argued, that the algorithm and everything that they're doing is essentially freedom of speech. And the long and short of it was that the Supreme Court essentially argued that, no, it isn't. You're a foreign entity in our country, so these rules don't apply to you.
So what would the implications then be? So let's say what we discussed will happen on Sunday, and then Monday what happens in the USA? Oh, we may have just lost. As we talk about a ban on Sunday, this ban has happened already. Now, I think hopefully we'll try and get Brandon Peterson back on the line. Talking about TikTok. If not, let's see if I can pick out some other comments from you, because lots of people having many different views. And here's another comment on TikTok.
Hello, Ashraf. Just wanted to let you know about another story that you haven't spoken about, the issue of Red Note. I've joined Red Note because America is planning to ban TikTok. So Americans have moved to Red Note, but I've also moved to Red Note. I'm having so much fun, but it's blind fun because I do not understand Mandarin, and Red Note is in Mandarin. You even get comments, but they are written in their own language. So it's so much fun, blind fun. Can we discuss this matter of Red Note? Thanks, Bongi.
All right, Sis Bongi, thanks for that. Red note is what you say, right? Blind fun. I'm trying to think about the image, right? Brandon, we have you back on the line. So, okay, let's say this. So what's going to happen on Monday then, when the U.S. and the Americans wake up on Inauguration Day and there's no TikTok? What are the implications to that country and to the people?
So for a lot of people, there's been a lot of businesses that are very reliant on TikTok in terms of revenue. So, obviously they are going to have to find other platforms. And for the rest of the world, essentially what this means is, we'll still have access to TikTok. We just now will not be seeing American content. So I think, from a South African, from a rest of the world perspective, it's a great opportunity for everybody else to, have more space, essentially, to showcase not just their perspectives and their opinions, but also for more businesses from around the world to be able to gain more eyes and attention on TikTok.
So, and who would gain? I mean, so one thing is other countries, but we've had the caller, as you heard earlier on, talking about Red Note, which I must say I have not followed in Mandarin or any other language by that matter.
Yes.
I mean, would that be another issue, which is a migration to another platform?
Well, we've already seen a vast majority of Americans jump over to Red Note, or Red Book as the proper name is. The problem with that is obviously that platform is not being designed for English use. It's been designed for Chinese use. So, there's a lot of laws and regulations there. The things are mostly written in Mandarin. So, there is no main sort of alternative at the moment for people to jump to. But there are ones that are being worked on. There's an app called Neptune, which is supposed to be launching in a couple of months, which a lot of people are just sort of jumping to Red Book and Red Note 4 until a platform like Neptune becomes available for them.
I mean, just as we wrap up, it does leave me with a broader issue, right? And there's been discussion not just with TikTok, but certainly even with the X platform or Twitter owned by Elon Musk, and how that's being used to drive a narrative. Now, in the past, you go on these social media platforms, it's simply meeting your buddies and becoming friends with them. Clearly, there's greater power in these social media platforms, aren't there?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, we've seen in the past, couple of years. Just look at the sort of run up to the elections. With the sort of voting campaign, a lot of people who don't support either candidate at that stage were using TikTok, to sort of band together and say, we're going to buy tickets to their speech and then we're not going to go. So I think, that's also a major concern. But what I've seen in the last couple of days on TikTok is a lot of people are saying, oh, this narrative we've been fed, from America, from wherever, this is not the truth that that we were told. This is not the truth about China, for example, about Chinese people, about Chinese life. So I think what's happening right now is there's a lot of questions going around about the power on both sides to sway people using these platforms.
Okay, that's where we can leave it. Brandon Peterson, appreciate your time. Let's see what happens to TikTok in the USA. But whatever happens in the USA on Monday, we will have TikTok, and you can follow SAFM Radio and myself, by the way, on TikTok, dabbling with that new platform. Right, 4:30. Let's get the news headlines. Here's Zondela.
Thank you, Ashraf. In the news headlines, the Johannesburg Stock Exchange and government are discussing the possibility of listing state-owned enterprises as part of their expanding partnership to grow and develop the economy. All southbound lanes on the N3 towards Durban are currently closed due to recovery operations at Van Rieenen Pass. This follows an abnormal load truck that overturned and lost its load, a transformer, yesterday. And Parliament has joined the country in congratulating the class of 2024 for their matric results. The Portfolio Committee on Basic Education says the results are a reflection of an improvement in the basic education sector. A full update follows at the top of the hour.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, YAS to expect delays on local routes around Wanderers Stadium due to Joburg Super Kings taking on Pretoria Capitals. Play starts at 5:30. The N1 southbound in four ways is queuing towards Winnie Mandela Drive, and the N3 southbound in Denver slow moving towards Giluli's interchange. In KZN, on the N3 lost load recovery reported near Van Rieenen Village. Traffic control measures at the scene, so expect delays. The N3 westbound has a stationary truck before Camperdown Road, and Old North North Coast Road is closed just north of Columbine Place. In the Free State on the N3, truck crash recovery south of Warden, so expect delays. In Limpopo on the R518, flooding reported at the Tamboti River Bridge. In Cape Town, the N2 outbound queuing towards Hospital Bend, the N1 outbound queuing towards Yiptiaga Avenue, and Baden-Powell Drive in Khayelitsha has sand reported on the carriageway at Monwabisi, so proceed with caution. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
This is SAFM Sports with Tuming Kapele.
Right, to me, I want tickets to the FIFA Club World Cup. Never mind, I expressed my misgivings about it or givings about it a few weeks ago. Yeah.
Well, talking about the FIFA Club World Cup, football fans can now get their tickets for all matches, including the playoffs. General public tickets for the playoffs are priced around $50, which is around 950 Rand in Category 4, with prices varying by the match. Now, the FIFA Club World Cup will feature 32 top clubs from all 6 continents and will kick off in Miami on the 14th of June. So if you have the money, let's go and support Mamelodi Sundowns. Meanwhile, Kaizer Chiefs have been linked with quite a number of players in this transfer window, from Bafana Bafana and Polokwane City star attacker Oswan Apollos to Tanzanian international and Azam FC midfielder Faisal Saloom. But Kazam Daung Jr. says that they still have to respect the clubs that they're engaging in and not to share their business publicly.
But it's very disrespectful to come out and speak about other clubs' players. I know people want to know information. I know they want to know progress. We would love to share that. For us, not saying anything is us not respecting anybody. It's us not being negative or us sitting in the office doing nothing. I really want to dispel that, because if I sit outside here and speak about every single player from a different team, I'll be doing a big disservice to the management of the team and to the player. We have to respect our colleagues, but we do want the fans to know, and our stakeholders, our sponsors, we are doing everything we can to make sure that in certain areas we can strengthen, but also we also understand that we also have a June window. So we're preparing on a twofold, because there's a short term, but we also have to plan for the next season. So we're taking the steps that we can, and we're working very tirelessly behind the scenes.
Meanwhile, Al Hilal are reportedly ready to offer Mo Salah a lucrative contract if he wants to leave Europe and play in Saudi Arabia. The Saudi champions are looking for a high-profile signing to replace Neymar, and will definitely keep you up to date with this developing story. Then Manchester United coach Ruben Amorim has called for consistency in his side in their upcoming matches. The Red Devils face Southampton tonight, looking for their first Premier League win since last month. The Saints are deep in the relegation zone, currently sitting bottom of the table and 8 points adrift of 19th place Leicester City, while the United are 15th on the lock.
Everybody can see that in some games we are a different team, and we have to be really consistent on that. I'm trying to do the same things to explain the strengths and the weakness of every team. We have to understand that the expectations are bigger, and we have to have more ball, and we have to control more the game, and that sometimes is harder to play against these teams, because I think, again, we have a lack of goal. We don't spend a lot of times doing this. This team in the past scored a lot of goals from transition, not from building up in the half of the opponent pitch. So we have a lot to improve, but the way we face the game has to be the same. We want to be a team that is hard to play. It's like I had this feeling, especially at home in the last games, that we were easy to play, and we have to be honest with that. So if we face the competition the right way, we will be tough to beat for any opponent. So that's what I wanted. That's what I felt in the last 2 games.
Moving on to cricket, Pakistan and West Indies have vowed a strong finish when they meet in the first test in Milton tomorrow. Despite dragging up the rear of the World Test Championship, Pakistan are currently 8th in the 2023-25 cycle of the WTC, with their rivals in last place, far behind finalists Australia and South Africa. Skipper Shan Masood says that the 2-test series was significant for Pakistan, who finished 6th and 7th in the first 2 WTC cycles, and Pakistan ended a winless stretch of 11 home tests by beating England 2-1 in October. And Masood wants his team to keep winning at home. This is despite a 2-0 defeat in South Africa this month. In athletics, comrades and Two Oceans champion Gerda Steyn says that she's determined to reclaim the South African marathon record that Glen Rose Xaba broke last year. Xaba set a new stunning record of 2 hours and 22 minutes during her debut at the Cape Town Marathon, surpassing Steyn's previous record of 2 hours and 24 minutes achieved at the Valencia Marathon in 2023. Now, having held the national record for 3 years and breaking it twice during that time, Steyn says that she is now focused on reclaiming her place at the top.
I'm not 100% sure about the plans that I have for the end of the year. I always like to do a marathon at the end of the year, November or December. So again, I'll have to see what my shape is. But of course, that is something that I would love to do. I'd love to get the record back. I held the record since 2021, and last year it was broken. So I would like for that, to keep the record for a little bit longer than those 3 years and to get it back. So I'll be doing my utmost best and try to do everything that I can in my power to get the record back. So I can't say yet where or when it will be, but 100% that is something that I'll be focused on.
Alrighty, that's it from my side for now.
All right, so those tickets for the FIFA World Cup,
for the FIFA Club
World Cup, yeah.
On sale.
I wonder.
950 rand.
For what?
This is excluding taxes and
excluding taxes. Okay. We will talk about it. Let's see how much we can collect. Anybody going to the FIFA Club World Cup, and does that get your fancy, particularly supporters of Mamelodi Sundowns?
Of course.
Right? Would you be keen
You
on
need to
that?
get visas.
There's a
you
new
need
coach
to
from the time that they were drawn. The whole coaching system has changed. But anyway, let's see if you are up for it. If you're a Sundown supporter, I want to know about it.
There's visas, plane tickets, and the ticket.
And your taxis and everything else. Taxis and taxes.
Accommodation
all that,
also.
And accommodation, yeah. And you got to bet the T-shirt too, yeah. Okay, bye. We have more sport in an hour.
Just last month, it was December, the season to be merry, or December. For those who know that it's not just a month, but a lifestyle. Now it's January and life is threatening watching financially. There's back to school and your own goals, and January is on everyone's lips.
Mara, you can get the relief you need right now and start the year strong with the personal loan from Nedbank with access up to 400,000 Rand. Search Nedbank Personal Loans and get a loan that offers you more. Nedbank. See money differently. We're a licensed FSP and registered credit provider. T's and C's apply.
Abafana West 10 and the Rockets are both looking for a decent spot in the top half. They are all confident they will walk away from the battlefield with jubilance. This is the Betway Premiership. Catch the great passion and drama of Mzansi's beautiful game. Golden Arrows FC takes on TS Galaxy FC on Saturday, 18 January, live on SABC 1 at 2:30 p.m. and SABC radio stations at 3:30 p.m. Also available everywhere for everyone, always on SABC Plus. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Economic news on SAFM. Facts and figures you can count on.
Okay, lots happening in the business world. Makwe Masilela will tell us all. He's the Chief Investment Officer at Makwe Fund Managers. Makwe, let's talk about local and global markets in a moment, but let's start with news about Richemont.
Yes, afternoon to you and to your listeners. For the third quarter report, this luxury goods giant, owner of Cartier and other high-end brands, reported a 10% increase in sales beating expectations, and this was driven by strong demand in jewelry and improving conditions in their watch segment, despite continued softness in China. And regionally, the U.S. emerged as a standout performer. U.S. local demand rebounded following the elections, and Asia-Pacific region, excluding Japan, continued to face headwinds. Share price is up nicely 15%, and a mildly softer consumer inflation and a slew of strong bank earnings from the U.S. sparked strong equity gains. Investors also welcomed the U.S. brokered ceasefire deal between Israel and Hamas, and market participants still remained on the edge before Trump takes office next week. And a better than expected inflation also sparked some bets that cooling inflation will invite more interest rate cuts from the Fed, and markets will continue to be cautious before the inauguration of Trump because there's still policy uncertainty. And if the risk of U.S. tariffs begins to materialize, then most likely the U.S. dollar will get another list, and a day after settling at multi-month highs on latest sanctions against Russia and larger than expected fall when it comes to U.S. crude inventories. Oil prices fell today down 0.8% at $81 a barrel, and the yellow metal is up to a 1-month high, taking a drop when it comes to the U.S. dollar and yields, as soft inflation data raised the bets on lower interest rates this year. We see gold is up 0.7% at 2,716. Platinum is up 0.4% at 940. Global stocks maintained momentum with the JSE up 0.3%, led by our resources, which are up 1%, and the rand fell 0.5% against the US dollar, is now 18.85, 22.98 against the pound, and 19.35 against the euro.
Okay, perfect. Thanks for that, Mark. We'll have a connection again with you sometime tomorrow. I will, in fact, we'll get to your calls just now. We will certainly do that. But in the meantime, there's some thoughts. So here's the point, exactly as per the previous listener about the Bella Act, right? And here's a caller or listener saying, Ashraf, hi, the Bella Act, correction to the listener, Act signed September 2024 with 2 sections pending for 3 months discussion, finalized December 2024 from Nqawe, from in Pietermaritzburg. Exactly the point. Got it. Another one, Ashraf, even in South Africa, rumors say they will ban TikTok. I believe they're busy talking to China about it. Why would you think South Africa would ban it? And South Africa talking to China about it? No, not the case. Right, you do know that Cape Town, according to, not everybody, but the Time Out magazine, Time Out Travel, in fact, has judged Cape Town the best city in the world. Let's talk to the mayor about it.
SAFM values your views. Be an active citizen.
So we often talk to, mayors of different cities about lack of service delivery, and maybe we should do that. But today it's very much a time to gloat and congratulate, because Cape Town has been named the 2025 best city in the world. And that's by Time Out, which is a magazine, an online platform as well. There's lots of, has a travel-leaning angle to what they do. So incredibly, they've put, should I say incredibly? Maybe not, right? Why should we be surprised? Jordan Hill-Lewis is the mayor of Cape Town. So Mayor Jordan Hill-Lewis, congratulations to you. What do you feel about being in a champion city?
Thank you very much. It's nice to be with you. We're thrilled, obviously, by that announcement. It came somewhat as a surprise. We didn't know it was happening this week. But we're obviously thrilled with the announcement and hope that it makes a positive contribution to growing our tourism economy even further.
So let's start with that. I mean, does it make, that these sort of accolades, do they make a contribution? Do they change, if anything, any narratives, even by 1 or 2%, that informs decisions from other people, tourists, to come to a city or to a country?
I think they do. It's hard to track that data, but the Time Out is a very widely read and respected publication around the world on travel and tourism and food tourism matters. And so I think if even a tiny portion of its readers decide to put Cape Town on their travel map and on their travel list, then that all helps, and it certainly helps to get the word out about Cape Town being an attractive destination. So I think it does help, and ultimately the whole point, the reason we do all of these things and try to get high up on these rankings and so on is so that we can get more people into work in the tourism economy.
Well, I mean, the link is pretty obvious. You've also made the point, right, that which should have been the base of my next question, how do they decide on that? And you use the word readers. Is it very much a Time Out readers-driven vote, or are there judges that also have input into it?
So there's first the survey portion of 18,500 members of the public who are Time Out readers and subscribers, and then there's a judges panel as well as a second round. They take all the data from the first round and then they assess the cities on 44 criteria, I'm told, and then they ultimately come up with a final ranking.
So, in fact, it's a combination of two, right? How?
Yeah.
What do they say? I would always say if I get given an award, it's like, what do you say about me? So, what did they say about Cape Town?
Well, it was very interesting. Obviously, as I expected, value for money played a big role. So they say for foreign guests that this is a place where you can have a great holiday without breaking the bank or spending your whole pension. They also talk about livability, the kind of excellent quality of life in Cape Town, and they talk about happiness, friendliness, that people here are friendly and welcoming and warm. They talk about great food and wine. That also features very, very highly. So I think the Cape Town restaurant scene and the fact that the quality of food is so excellent, the quality of wine is so excellent, also played a big factor.
And I take it that this is very much tourist-driven, meaning that
yes.
It is by the magazine, but people who are in the tourism space, that means they're not from South Africa, meaning if we put the same question to South Africans, would we get the same answer? In fact, if we put the same question to Cape Townians, would we get the same answer too?
Well, I don't know how many Cape Townians have been to all of those other cities, so that it's hard to know what to compare it to if you haven't traveled to all of those cities. Obviously, the writers and judges panel have traveled to all of them. But yeah, I think that many Cape Townians love our city and think we do live in one of the coolest places in the world, and so would agree with that.
And last year, I understand that Cape Town finished second. I think it was New York City that was top, right? So clearly there's a consistency in terms of perception. So now, yes, I would take it you've traveled. I certainly have traveled. Just been to Oman recently, by the way. Very different sort of world, right? And the fact is, all of us, in a matter of a week that we spend typically in a city or a country, we form opinions. Some of it is not absolutely spot on, but we form those opinions. How powerful are those, let's call it influencer opinions that we all share on our social media pages?
No, that's extremely important. In this world of social media where an influencer can post a first impression of a city on arriving here or on spending a few days here, and that gets hundreds and hundreds of thousands of impressions around the world, that is extremely important. That's why we put so much effort into that.
But that one, and there's another discussion about the formal influencer, right? But the other is simply a person, traveling and posting on, and let's say specifically, I would think about Instagram, which is so linked to travel. Again, on my trips now, we did that. And we've been very aware, if not big influencers, but the power of our influence in terms of just sharing that. Does that suggest that perhaps even more effort from your side and other cities in South Africa as well needs to be put in to ensure that people come here, then must enjoy it, but then must tell others about it?
Yes, no, that's true. There might be some formal way that we can investigate incentivizing that, but we do, Cape Town Tourism, which is our tourism kind of marketing organization, they do work with formal influencers as well. But you're right, so the most powerful form is the word of mouth.
Let's go back then in terms of, whatever the audience of Time Out Magazine has said about Cape Town, how do you measure that? Meaning, it's possible that what they say about your city, you may not quite agree with it. You'll take the award anyway, but what would you like to change?
I tend to agree with obviously, it's not surprising that I tend to agree with most of what they've said. I would just say that the reason that we are doing all of this, the reason that we welcome these kind of rankings, is so that we can get more people into work in Cape Town and grow the tourism economy. So, we know that there are still many places in Cape Town, as there are many places in South Africa, where it is still incredibly tough to live. There's still far too much poverty and unemployment. But that is why we have to focus so much on growing the tourism economy, and why these accolades are most welcome.
And just lastly, what are the numbers? In terms of how big is Cape Town's tourism economy in rands, and then how big is it in terms of numbers of people actually from outside South Africa visiting Cape Town?
About 2 million people. We think we're going to cross over the 2 million visitor mark this year. We've never done that before. Last year we got very close. We got to literally 1.95 million. I think this year we will cross over the 2 million mark for the first time ever. So this tourism market is still growing, and it has lots and lots of potential. If you think about how many hundreds of millions of middle class or wealthy travelers there are out there in the world, we are still only, we're doing well, but we're still only getting 2 million. So we've got a long way to grow. And so we're confident we can still do that. And to give you a indication of how important this is, there's somewhere between 80 and 100,000 people employed in the city just in the tourism sector.
Okay, I think that's a very significant point. Well, long may that continue, and I'll say this, maybe it's a conversation for another time. We had a chat about Bishop Lavis yesterday about their big problems. So, yes, we need more tourists, 80,000 people, as you said, employed by that, and hopefully that sort of money can be recycled into uplifting other communities. Another conversation for another time. But for now, well done, congratulations, keep it going, and certainly love to speak to someone at the helm of a city that are seen as champions in their very own spaces. Mayor Jordan Hill-Lewis, thanks for your time. Much appreciated. There you are. That's great for South Africa. It has to be. No matter what you may think about the politics of the country, anything that cycles back or circles back into South Africa's growth has got to be good for the country. Don't you think so?
Across South Africa, online and on radio. SAFM, let's talk.
Right, let's get your opinions. First of all, a comment on Zama Zamas. Mastermind, right?
Yes,
Go ahead, yeah.
Yes, good afternoon to you and listeners of Mr. Carter.
Thank you.
No, I want to comment about this Zama, especially those who have died now, because you see now these people, now there is no one who can identify them as the foreign people, and we've been making a call to the government of who are leading the country for 30 years of the ANC to making sure that the people there must be documented properly in this country. But our call was just fall in the deep ears at some point, because till now there are many people entering, and now the problem is going bigger. Who will now come in and identify these people? And these ANC leaders, they are still need to be called so to answer or prosecuting about these people who have died, because at some point, Mr. Gadra, these people, they have made a big mistake, because now who is supposed to making everything is the government to take money of the country taxpayers.
Okay.
And if you see, Mr. Gardner, even now, ANC still on the power, because this unit government, it doesn't help. Mr. Johnson Hazen, they were calling ANC making people come and try in the country without any documentary. But now they're receiving money of the taxpayers there. They've got the houses. They don't even care now with anything.
Okay.
This unit government.
All right, but now you're saying so many different things. Honestly, we're going all over the place. We're losing your mind. And you are the mastermind. I must say that with respect, the mastermind. Thanks for that call, mastermind. Okay, we have other comments. Michael's got a thought on TikTok. Michael, go for it.
Yes, how are you?
Good indeed, right? Your thoughts?
Yeah, my thought is that I think USA are doing the right thing.
Why?
TikTok is too addictive and it's siphoning people's money. You may see it as if it's a good thing for them, but on the other hand, it's making people very poor and poorer. There are few that are benefiting, but it's very addictive. It's like gambling. So for me, it needs to be regulated. I think USA, they're doing the right thing for their citizens of the country. I think so. As South Africa, they must learn something. Not that in TikTok. China are very greedy. They are good in controlling whatever is coming from them. But when it goes to other countries like Facebook, didn't exist in China. Where is it coming from USA?
But I mean, that's the point. You see, your point is it's not like they're banning TikTok because it's addictive. They're banning it because of what they see as Chinese influence in terms of access to their data. That's because, Facebook's around and X is still there, and so is Instagram and everybody else, right? Michael, thanks for that. Okay, we can have two thoughts on the ceasefire. First, Salim in Durban. Go for it.
Hi, Ashraf.
Yep.
You're asking the question, will the ceasefire last? Will the peace last?
Yeah.
The question is, will the occupation last? If Israel wants peace with Palestine, they need to end the occupation. They need to end the brutality and the military incursion. They need to stop the apartheid and injustice in Palestine. Then only there will be peace. I don't think so Israel wants to do that, because all they want is a peace of Palestinian land. They do not want peace with the Palestinian people.
Okay, got that, Salim. You've made your point very clear in terms of my question. How do you attain a lasting peace in the Middle East, specifically in that region, Israel, Palestine? And that's Salim's thoughts. Right, for Yiswa in Parktown North, you have an opinion too on the ceasefire. Go for it.
Yes, thanks, Ashraf, for taking my call. The problem here is that
It's a propaganda machinery. You know, Trump has got his own agenda. The countries that Trump is going to invade, attack. So they need to stop these ones and start another war. Because the word peace, Ashraf, is a long way. We are working towards there. We'll never arrive there with this kind of leadership that the world has produced.
We'll never.
Because it's all mafias, you know.
It's all mafias. I'm suddenly afraid.
Yeah.
Very, very afraid. Well, thanks for that, right? Okay, further comments from you?
When it comes to issues of human rights and the genocide, it's not a partisan issue. It's not I'm biased because everybody has their own opinion. No, there's a wrong opinion. And the opinion that sides with the genocide, it cannot be justified. It is a wrong opinion.
Wow. Point made, and very strongly so. Here's another comment.
And the listeners, it's Kanya from Flagstaff. As we celebrate the ceasefire deal, I think one of the things that the international community could be doing is forcing Israel in paying reparations to Palestinians in order to rebuild the country to become a functioning state. And also the ICC warrants of arrest to Netanyahu and Yoav Gallant should proceed as per judgment in order for them to face persecution. After all, we cannot reverse the killing of thousands of Palestinians. So the international community should be advocating for that, Israel paying reparation to Palestine, so that any country that thinks of doing the same thing again should know the repercussions of doing such a thing.
Well, interesting point you bring up. You see, the reality is all these countries work in silos. So when we talk about a negotiated ceasefire, it's really U.S.-driven, my understanding, together with Egypt and Qatar, right? Of course, and on the other hand, the Israelis and Hamas. Now, that has got nothing to do with the ICC and the ICJ and the United Nations and United Nations Security Council. All the things you've mentioned, I think, are important issues to consider, right? But it's certainly not going to be an either or. I don't think so.
Good afternoon, Mr. A. It's wonderful news for the whole world. It's a fantastic new year for all mankind. But I just want to highlight a couple of things that almost 90% of people are kind of confused. Why America is helping Israel and why the UK also is supporting Israel. It's simple. They are all brothers. Those are the sons of Jacob. They are all Jewish people. So America cannot allow Israel to be disseminated. Same with the UK. They can't allow Israel to be destroyed because they are brothers. They are children of Jacob. That is all in the Bible. You want to see the Bible live? Check Israel, what is going on there. Thank you, Pastor Cape Town.
Well, listen, I can't speak on the religious aspect, but I can tell you something now. I mean, Trump himself, even now, even though a deal has been negotiated, is very clear in terms of his position, in terms of what he wants to see in that region. And therefore, my question, by the way, if you tuned in late, please listen to two interviews that we had earlier on. One to Anne Herzberg, who's a researcher from the NGO Monitor based in Jerusalem. And then we chatted to George Galloway, who, as you know, is a British politician and a writer, activist, and the host of the mother of all talk shows. We did those interviews back to back, two very, very different perspectives, absolutely. I want you to listen to it. Go to the SAFM website and then check it out as a podcast. Listen to it, share it, talk about it, and let's have a further conversation about it. I think it's that important in terms of what they say. Right, let's get the news now. It's 5 o'clock. Here's Greg House.
Thanks, Ashraf. Top stories. JSE discusses the possibility of listing state-owned enterprises, and UN urges end to Gaza bombardment despite ceasefire. For SFM News, I'm Gina Modown. Good afternoon. The Johannesburg Stock Exchange and government are discussing the possibility of listing state-owned enterprises as part of their expanding partnership to grow and develop the economy. The two parties say two areas of potential collaboration include the establishment of a township stock exchange and investment into the carbon market. Minister of Planning, Monitoring and Evaluation in the Presidency, Maropeni Ramakgopa.
Before, it used to just be that SOEs are just government controlled and governed. But now that we are coming up with a bill that is already in Parliament, we are really hoping that by the end of February, the process that is the last leg of public participation will be finalized. That would allow us to then now start saying that SOEs can actually be listed, whereas before they were not part of that. So the process of ensuring that our SOEs are based on market orientation has already started. It's for this reason that we came here as well, and they are going to assist us to come up with policies and frameworks that would allow us to do a better job.
Moving to KZN, all southbound lanes on the N3 towards Durban are currently closed due to recovery operations at Van Riemen's Pass. This follows an abnormal load truck that overturned and lost its load, a transformer, yesterday. The N3 toll concession has confirmed in a statement that traffic is currently being diverted through a single northbound lane with stop-and-go controls. Motorists are warned to expect prolonged traffic disruptions and are advised to exercise caution when approaching the area. The Portfolio Committee on Basic Education of the National Assembly in Parliament says it has developed what it calls a concept document aimed at dealing with the scourge of teenage pregnancies at schools. Chairperson of the committee, Joy Maimela, says the document intends to interrogate the previous policies and laws pertaining to pregnancy of teenagers at schools. Maimela was among 4 other chairpersons who briefed the media on their achievements and challenges.
Now, what the concept document essentially does is to say we've been trying to deal with this problem and seemingly we are not winning. What are we not doing right? So it evaluates all the interventions that are in place. We actually, in the concept document, interrogate the different policy documents that we have and the interventions, the different programs that Uwa would have spoken about, even programs that we would have implemented ourselves as basic education over time. We're interrogating all those interventions and we're saying what is not working.
In other news, ANC military veteran and retired Major General of the South African Defence Force, Keith Mokwape, has passed away at the age of 77. Mokwape, who was a veteran of South Africa's liberation struggle and former Chief of Military Intelligence of the African National Congress military wing, Umkhonto Wesizwe, passed away peacefully this morning at a hospital in Midrand. Major General Mokwape is also remembered for being a founding member of the South African Students' Organization. And further afield, the United Nations Human Rights Commission in Geneva says while the organization welcomes the ceasefire between Israel and Hamas, it is concerned that the bombardment of Gaza by the Israel Defense Force continues and people are being killed. The agreement includes a hostage release deal after intensive mediation efforts and talks that took place in Doha, Qatar. Speaking to the SABC UNHRC spokesperson, Ravina Shamdasani raised the issue of accountability and impunity.
We are relieved. We share the relief of people in the occupied Palestinian territory, particularly in Gaza, as well as people in Israel, some of whom will be seeing their family members after 15 months of them being held hostage. But we're also very worried. The ceasefire comes into effect on Sunday, and what we have seen since last night is continued bombardment in Gaza by Israel. And we are calling on all parties to do everything in their power to ensure that the ceasefire holds.
Shamdasani has also called on communities to elect leaders who respect and protect the rights of all people.
There is absolutely a need for political leadership that prioritizes the human rights of people, of all people. Unfortunately, what we are increasingly seeing is political leadership that is populist and that seeks to divide rather than to unite people around the cause of human rights. As our High Commissioner for Human Rights has said, those who have the right to vote need to be very vigilant in how they exercise their right. Make sure that you are electing leaders who are advocating for the human rights of all people.
Recapping the top story this hour, the Johannesburg Stock Exchange and government are discussing the possibility of listing state-owned enterprises as part of their expanding partnership to grow and develop the economy. For SFM News, I'm Dino Mutaung. Headlines at 5:30.
And coming up in your sports, the South Bloemfontein Celtics set on returning to the Premier Soccer League and make or break as SA teams hand playoffs in Europe. More details at 5:30.
SAFM has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Under the code, we are committed to giving news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that is not harmful, does not amount to hate speech, or contain violence or explicit sex. If you think we are not living up to that code, then you can inform the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Direct any complaints in writing to the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. PO Box 142365, Craig Hall 2024. Fax to 011-326-3198 or an email to bccsa@nabsa.co.za. For more information, please visit www.bccsa.co.za. SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the M1 southbound in Bloemfontein has a crash reported near Smith Street. The R59 northbound in Alberton has delays on the link to the N12 west at Reading interchange, and the N1 northbound in Centurion slow moving towards Old Johannesburg Road. In KZN on the N3 westbound, there's a stationary truck before Camperdown exit. The N3 westbound has a stationary vehicle before the M13 Paradise Valley interchange, and on the N3 a lost load recovery near Van Renen village with traffic control measures at the scene, so expect delays. In the Free State, on the N3, a truck crash recovery south of Warden, so expect delays. In Limpopo, the R518 flooding reported at Tamboti River Bridge. In Cape Town, the N1 outbound, a stationary truck on Plattekloof Hill. The M5 southbound, slow moving towards Kromboom Road exit. The M3 southbound, slow moving towards Rhodes Drive, and the N2 outbound, queuing towards Hospital Bend. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m.
So much conversation, understandably, from last night and all day today about the goings on in the Middle East regarding the potential ceasefire. It should be cast in stone, should happen on Sunday finally, but it has implications to all of us around the world. We know that. So I had a chat with Anne Hertzberg as well as George Galloway early on in the show from 3 o'clock. Listen out to that. Go to the website, check out the podcast, safm.co.za. And of course, many people have different opinions about it. Here's just my quick thought about it. I think what's very clear is what has been negotiated now is a ceasefire to stop what has happened now. So there'll be a prisoner swap. There will be the withdrawal of Israeli Defense Force troops from Gaza. There'll be an attempt to rebuild that region. And there'll be a couple other things as well, right? And clearly, I mean, the key part is ceasefire, so no firing. But beyond that, there's so many problems. And I've asked that question earlier on. It's like, what is it that will create the lasting peace? And there's no question in my mind that for that to happen, you honestly have to go back to what happened at the Balfour Declaration. Like in South Africa, you can't simply say, we 1990, we have a negotiation, we then can maybe vote and nothing else matters. You have to go back to the root cause of the problem. And in the Middle East situation, the root cause of the problem is what happened in 1917 with regard to the Balfour Declaration. And that sparked off a series of, a domino effect around the region and affected both peoples, Israelis and Palestinians, because even when you benefit, it still affects you because you have to respond to that, and that causes that inequality that exists in that region. So that for me is the key part. Justice has got to be established. In the absence of justice, you're never going to get a lasting peace. And a key function of a lasting peace is that it has to be underpinned by justice. And I'd like to think it's not going to happen in one day, but all the political leaders of the world and that region, whoever they may be, left, right, middle, center, if they really care enough about humanity, they've got to put more attention, not just on papering over the cracks by getting a piece of peace, but to ensure that justice is then what dominates that land. Without that, the absence of justice is the absence of peace. And the absence of peace will always be there in the absence of justice. Well, that's my point.
SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide. Leading the conversation.
By the way, you know, every Friday, normally, we have the fireside chat. So tomorrow, we have the very first fireside chat for the year. And I think it's Poppy Khoza. I'm sure it is. In fact, Poppy Khoza, who's the head of the Civil Aviation Authority. She's an absolutely dynamic woman. What a business leader. We're talking to her for an hour from 5 to 6 tomorrow. Absolutely looking forward to that conversation. Right, let's get to other things more current for now in our country. And that is, interesting. We talk about justice and peace. So what about what's happened in Stilfontein? So now we know that rescue operations have been wound down. And here's the numbers. 216 survivors and 78 dead bodies. That's regarding these miners. You would say miners, illegal miners. They're miners who've gone down into the mines and they've been rescued. 78 dying, 216 survivors. There are so many lessons to learn from this. Where do we go from here next, right? So the Mining Affected Communities United in Action, that's Makua, they've certainly a position on this. Let's chat about it to them with Sabelo Nguni. Sabelo, appreciate your time. Thanks for connecting on the National Pulse.
Thank you for having us. Good afternoon to the listeners at home.
Thank you. Sabelo, right, you've heard me talk about now operations have been wound down, like there's like a stop. I understand that's all on hold. On reflection, 216 survivors, 78 bodies recovered, so 78 people have died. What's your response?
Thanks. Yeah, the numbers that you are referring to are numbers that were confirmed by the Mine Rescue Services. Remember, we also retrieved the bodies as a community rescue operation. We also retrieved people, so those numbers need to be added to the numbers that we retrieved. Nonetheless, at the moment, numbers are secondary. It is a painful situation what happened in Stilfontein. It's a situation that was avoidable if the call were responded earlier when they were made by the community of Khuma to say that people are trapped in particular a shaft, which is shaft 11. But then we focused as a society, we focused on debating where the criminals need to be saved, the foreign nationals. We focused at their economic status and their deeds, whereas their life were at stake. So now we are sitting with 89 bodies when we at the 11 that we also extracted as a community rescue services. It's a situation that is we need to learn lessons. One as a state.
So help us understand this. So what are the lessons? I mean, let's recap. You have a mine, then you have a mine that's disused mine, so they've effectively shut down. Then those mines are taken over by miners, legal, illegal, whatever. They shouldn't be there, so they're operating. They go down under. They obviously trying to seek their fortune or survive. Then they have problems underground. Then they can't come out. Then nobody wants to help them. Then government effectively puts a stop to them even coming out. So then they starve down under. Then they die. Then some of them get rescued by a court order. Now, that's the whole cycle. Then many of them get repatriated or should be, I would think, if they are foreign nationals. So overall, what are the big lessons to learn from this?
The issue of artisanal miners, or as you describe it, it's a secondary problem. Problem number one, what is good about South Africans? We've got the constitution. We've got a legislation that is called MPRDA, which regulates how mining should be conducted in South Africa. So it is clear that for Zamazama to take place, an environment needs to be created. There is an environment where we are sitting with 6,000 derelict mines that are yet to be properly sealed in terms of how the law prescribed in South Africa. Who is the custodian of that particular legislation? It's the Department of Minerals. The Department of Minerals is sleeping its job. That's lesson number one. It allowed an environment to occur. It allowed an environment to take place. Criminals, number one, are mining companies, commercial mining companies that came to communities that they will develop them, take the mineral and leave derelict mines and leave open shaft. Remember, open shaft, they don't only create an environment for artisanal mining to take place. There are communities where children fall into shaft, animals fall into shafts, they will not be recovered. No one is reporting those incidents. So we are, as a society at the moment, we are sitting with 6,000 derelict mines. That's the problem that we have. We need to deal with the cause not the results of the problem.
So what would you do? What would you do with these derelict mines? I mean, they derelict for a reason, right? What would you do with them?
Mining companies need to follow legislation. That stands for in straight and forward. Department of Mineral needs to ensure mining companies they adhere to the laws of South Africa. Then there won't be any environment that is created. There won't be any issue. Number two, it is clear that the industry is alive. I'm talking now the artisanal mining. It is clear that it's an opportunity that we need to embrace as a society. It's an alternative. It's an economy that is alive. So the TMR needs to ensure that the industry is decriminalized, is regulated, so that it's a safe space. One, after once it has regulations, any criminal element that we are concerned with as society to say artisanal miners, they have a tendency of causing terror in the community, they've got the tendency of fighting for territory. Once there are regulations, there will be mechanisms. Everyone will know Sabelo is working in that particular farm, so and so is working in that particular farm. So therefore, there's no reason to fight over territory. If you fight over territory, the SAPS is there. They will come in also to enforce the law. So regulations will solve every problem.
All right, so I hear that, and maybe part of that would be your additional lobbying around the importance of artisanal miners, right? But just the last thing, right? So one thing is maybe lobbying government or the ministry to re-look at that. But on the other hand, that doesn't sort out the one issue, not so much about the mining illegally, but certainly foreign nationals, undocumented, who are also there in the first place. What are your thoughts on that?
The Department of Home Affairs needs to deal with it. That's the issue that's it with. As I'm saying, the lessons that we're learning here, our government, the people that are custodian of the legislation are not enforcing the law. They're sleeping at their job.
Okay.
That's the problem, yeah.
Sleeping on the job. Appreciate your time. Certainly get us thinking. Sabelo Ngudi, the Makua National Administrator. Makua meaning the mining affected communities united in action. They're very clear, get these artisanal miners to get them working, get these unused mines, get them working. The country needs that, and they need to deal with policy on that issue as well. What do you make of that? There's more to come. We'll chat about, there was an update on the World Economic Forum breakfast next up.
If you think you cannot afford a lawyer, think again. Clientele Legal has made professional legal services affordable for you. Whether it's a civil, criminal, or labor-related matter, we have a nationwide panel of attorneys standing by to assist you. SMS SAFM to 32195. That's SAFM to 32195 and we'll call you back. Clientele General is a licensed non-life insurer and an authorized FSP. Standard rates and terms and conditions apply.
The Bees want to be all over the pitch and keep the 3 points on home ground.
It could be tied to Brentford. There's Wishers in here. Brentford have got 5 goals at St Mary's.
Meanwhile, the Reds want to emphasize that they will never walk alone, but with victory.
Lovely ball. Gakpo. Goal! Brilliant as well, as ever, from Cody Gakpo.
This is the Premier League, striving for excellence. Experience the glittering encounter between Brentford FC and Liverpool FC on Saturday, 18 January at 4:30 p.m. live on SABC3. Also available at your fingertips on SABC Plus. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
X at SAFM Radio and at Ashraf Garda.
There's been developments around placement of learners in Gauteng. Also, I understand that the school in Kliptown, there's been huge problems there. But we'll come to that in a moment with Steve Mabona. But for now, there's the World Economic Breakfast or World Economic Forum breakfast that took place this morning. That's all ahead of the move to Davos in Switzerland next week. Now, that's the annual gathering of the business leaders and political leaders, I would think, around the world, right? The SABC's economics reporter, Katlego Legori, was at the breakfast, and he'll tell us more about it. Katlego, appreciate your time. Hi.
Very good afternoon to you, Ashraf, and to our viewers and listeners at home.
Okay, so you're in the company of business leaders. What was it like?
Well, it was thrilling. It's always thrilling to see them in suits and ties. And this time around, we see them really meeting for an all-important meeting, or ahead of this all-important meeting, the World Economic Forum, as we see the world moving into Davos in the coming week.
Okay. So what happens, I mean, I know there's an annual visit in South Africa, like many other countries are represented there. So when you have a breakfast like this just a few days before they actually head off to Davos, what do they discuss? I mean, what's the purpose of it?
So basically the purpose here was to speak from the same voice. Going into Davos, so we see business and government just sitting around the same table and just coming up with strategies in terms of the message that South Africa is taking to Davos, where 2025 is concerned. And this becomes very important, Ashraf, because we find ourselves now with a shift in the political space where South Africa is concerned. They go there now under the banner of the Government of National Unity. Most of the ministers, it will be their first time just moving into Davos, and we'll see them just now as part of cabinet coming through with strategies to ensure economic growth and investor confidence in South Africa. So today we see them saying that they're aligned now on their approach heading into the World Economic Forum that's taking place in the coming week. So this becomes also very important because South Africa is the president of the G20. So here we'll be looking at going into Davos armed by that in terms of ensuring that everyone that will be coming into South Africa, they get a fair understanding of what's on offer and how they're going to more or less get the best out of the sun. That is the sun of South Africa.
So that's interesting. I mean, you're right. I mean, normally I would have asked you just how important is South Africa when pitched or stacked against 100 other countries from around the world at Davos. And I would think that, its consequence may be less important. But the fact that they head up the G20 this year, that would take on a greater currency and therefore put South Africa in a far more prominent position at Davos, doesn't it?
Yeah, they become very relevant. They become a darling right now of the globe, especially the group of 20 that will be heading into South Africa. So we're told that there are already conversations, there are already meetings, G20 meetings that are being held. And the ministers, earlier on I was speaking to Minister Park Dow. I also had a chance to speak to the Finance Minister, Enoch Godongwana. Both of them just giving us a sense of their diaries going into Davos, and they're saying that it's a packed diary, meeting after meeting, one after the other. But they're saying that this is good news for South Africa because at least we'll see just the economic growth and most of the people just moving to invest in resolving some of the challenges that we have here at home. It's all about economic growth. It's all about ensuring that there's job creation on the ground, but also everybody else just punting and talking about ensuring that there are investments, and those investments come through to change the lives of South Africans here at home.
Okay. And just very quickly, I mean, you say speak with one voice. I mean, do you get a sense that what would that one voice say?
Yeah, so what they're saying here is that they're going to present a stable political, situation in South Africa right now under the Government of National Unity. We see business. I think if you more or less we take it back to when the Government of National Unity was formed, we saw a resounding support from business in terms of how they're going to be working with government. So now they're moving into various sectors. One, they're going to be looking at energy, ensuring that load shedding indeed becomes a thing of the past as we see those investments coming through. They're looking at the logistics sector in terms of how we're going to get the best out of this. Remember that there's also the Africa Free Continental Trade Area and BRICS, and South Africa comes through as somewhat of a pathway to Africa in terms of making and doing business here at home. So we hear them just talking about digitization in line with the theme for this year. And they're talking about going there and ensuring that at least we become, amped up in terms of the digital age. Remember that there are also cross-cutting issues like climate change, the just energy transition. So these are some of the issues that they're taking there as well to say, we too here at South Africa, we're pushing for that decarbonization, and these are the challenges that we're experiencing or where we find ourselves right now. There are talks about investments in green hydrogen and initiatives that will ensure that we see electric vehicles becoming attractive here at home. So there's a lot that came out of there, that strategic move into Davos in the coming week to ensure that we get the best out of that.
Okay, that's where we leave it. I think you made the point, speaking with one voice. I think the big question is, will that voice be heard in Davos? Katlego Legori, the SABC News economics reporter, thank you for your time. Well, I'll tell you what, the voice of parents who want to get their children placed in schools, according to some of them, well, they're not being heard. We'll talk about that after this.
Conversations that you connect with and react to. SAFM.
Right, day 2, schooling around the year 2025. Lots of celebration. Remember just the day before that, but now it's a case of, does your child have a place in a school? Let's focus on Gauteng in particular for now. It could well be ditto elsewhere. I understand that because the issues resonate. That in Gauteng in particular, there are many parents who've attempted to get their kids or their children in schools and they are not being placed. So what's the scoreboard really with regard to placement? Steve Mabona is with me, the spokesperson for the Gauteng Department of Education. Steve, appreciate your time as always. Thanks for connecting.
Good afternoon. Compliments of the new season and to all our listeners.
Much appreciated. Right, so what is the scoreboard? I mean, give us a sense of Gauteng. How many learners placed? How many of them still need to be placed? And what happens next?
Now, we have placed over 325,000 learners during our admission period. And for the late applicants, we have now already placed over 28,000. The challenge that we have in our offices currently is the parents who just came for relocation. They did not apply at all. For grade 1 and grade 8. You also have the category of the parents who are relocating who are seeking inner grades. Inner grades is anything besides grade 1 and 8. And you'll understand that those grades are attended to at school level. So when they are frustrated about them not being placed at the schools, they will then come to our district offices. So that's why you see those queues. It's multi-prone, it's not only grade 1 and 8. Then you have those that would have applied late. Late application, we opened on the 11th of December. We are closing on the 30th of January. When they applied in the system, because we didn't upload schools that were full, they will then apply to any school, whether it's in the feeder zone or outside. They will just apply and then they will go to the district and say, the school that you provided to me, it's far. And then there's another category of those parents that would have placed them in our satellite schools. Because we are so highly pressured, we have introduced satellite schools. We have 10 of those that we started last year. We're going to introduce this year about 15. So some of the parents that we've placed at satellite schools, because they are mobile units, they are reluctant to take their children there.
Okay, lots of it very, very complicated. Are you saying that by and large, the real problem is that parents who are not applying on time? I mean, that fundamentally is where the problem is.
We cannot chastise them for not applying on time because some is circumstantial. You will find that they realize very late in the year that the problem has come to Gauteng. Some, the family circumstances changes. They probably must come to Gauteng or children must come here. But we normally anticipate the numbers that will come between December and January. So we know how many of those that we were going to be contending with. The challenge is that some of them, they find schools that they prefer full. The district offices, they need to find space and interact with the principals and check on where they are going to increase capacity. I can assure you that most of our schools will be overcrowded, and it's inevitable because, most especially where we are pressured, many parents preferring a certain school and lack of alternative schools in the area. It dictates that we must overcrowd and provide more mobile units to then augment on those spaces.
Okay, we want to use them, I'm afraid, so we're going to have to just cut it short now. But just stay with that one, that issue of how do we resolve the overcrowding problem? Because that obviously compromises quality. And as you answer that, just talk about what's happened at Kliptown Primary, but you've got a minute to do that.
Okay. Now we will continue to build schools. We'll also increase classes at the existing schools and also introduce the satellite schools. That is going to alleviate a lot of pressure, for us. At Kliptown, we understand the parents shut down the school. We visited and interacted with the parents. In principle, we agreed that they will allow the service provider to come tomorrow, do what they're supposed to be doing in the satellite area because they're not going to occupy the asbestos school. Then there's an undertaking that if we finish probably between Friday and Sunday, they will then come back to school on Monday. But if you're not done, possibly we might then, come back at school on Tuesday.
Okay, let's leave it at that. We'll have a further chat, I'm sure, down the line about that. Steve Mabona, the spokesperson for the Gauteng Department of Education. Here's the news headlines. Here's Daneo.
A very good afternoon. Let's take a look at the headlines at 5:30. There is need for all initiates to first be examined by health practitioners before they go for circumcision. This is the view of the chairperson of Parliament's Portfolio Committee on Health, Bongiseni Klomo. In other news, all southbound lanes on the N3 towards Durban are currently closed due to recovery operations at Van Reenen's Pass. This follows an abnormal load truck that overturned and lost its load, a transformer, yesterday. And a second suspect has been arrested by the Hawks in connection with the murder of Sergeant Ntombi Mbandra. A full update follows at the top of the hour.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, YAST expect delays on local routes around Wanderers Stadium due to Joburg Super Kings taking on Pretoria Capitals. Play starts at 5:30. The N1 southbound in four ways is queuing towards Winnie Mandela Drive exit, and the N1 northbound in Centurion slow moving towards Old Johannesburg Road. In KZN, the M41 eastbound has a truck lost load reported after the N2 highway. The N3 westbound has a stationary truck before Camperdown exit. The N3 westbound a stationary vehicle before the M13 Paradise Valley interchange, and on the N3 a lost load recovery near Van Renen village with traffic control measures at the scene, so expect delays. In Cape Town, Baden-Powell Drive and Khayelitsha has stand on the carriageway at more busy, so proceed with caution. Albert Road outbound is slow moving through Woodstock, the M3 southbound slow moving towards Rhodes Drive, and the N2 outbound queuing towards Hospital Bend. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
This is SAFM Sports with Tuming Kapele.
Jimmy, the other day we spoke about football clubs or sporting clubs and their legacy and their tradition. Is like when you say even Western Province, the blue and white stripes of rugby, it's a tradition. And then somehow we talked about the green and white stripes of Bloom Celtic, like what has happened to them. But you have a story about that.
I do have an update. They have announced that the club has withdrawn from participating in the ABC Motsepe League with immediate effect. In a statement that the club has sent out, they say that the team has now been taken over by a consortium which is best positioned to ensure that Punya Selesele returns to the Betway Premiership. No further information has been given, but we'll definitely keep a close eye on the story. So all we know is that the consortium is planning to get status in the league. Meanwhile, the PSL have officially confirmed the dates, venues and kickoff times for the highly anticipated Nedbank Cup last 32 encounters. The opening weekend will see Motsepe Foundation Championship side Pretoria Callis host Maruma Gallants kick off things at the Lucas Muripe Stadium. This is on the 24th of January at 7 p.m. In other selected fixtures, Sibanye Golden Stars take on Mamelodi Sundowns at Loftus Versfeld Stadium on the 25th of January, and that match is at 6 p.m. Richards Bay FC will face a stern test against Orlando Pirates at the Kingsway Tini Stadium at 3 p.m. And this is on the 26th of January. Then Kaizer Chiefs will close off the action on the day at FNB Stadium, looking to avoid a shock defeat against Free Agents FC, and that's at 6 p.m. Meanwhile, Royal AM will battle Milford FC at the Harry Gwala Stadium on the 28th, and then the final act of the round of 32 will see TS Galaxy go head-to-head with CR Vasco da Gama at the Mbombela Stadium at 7 p.m. Meanwhile, Al Hilal are ready to offer Mo Salah a lucrative contract if he wants to leave Europe and play in Saudi Arabia. The Saudi champions are looking for a high-profile signing to replace Neymar. Then Manchester United coach Ruben Amorim has called for consistency in his side in the upcoming matches. The Red Devils face Southampton tonight, looking for their first Premier League win since last month. And the Saints are deep in relegation zone, currently sitting bottom of the table Newcastle, and 8 points adrift of 19th place Leicester City, while United are 15th. In rugby, it's do or die for 5 South African franchises competing in the Champions Cup and the EPCR Challenge Cup competitions this weekend. As the pool stage reaches a close, the Sharks and Stormers, who are both in 4th place in their pools, will have one last chance to book playoff spots in the Champions Cup, while the Emirates Lions and Toyota Cheetahs, they both ranked 5th in their groups. They'll be under a lot of pressure to claim wins to keep their EPCR Challenge Cup playoff hopes alive. In the meantime, the Bulls will wrap up their 2024-25 Champions Cup campaign. This is after dropping out of the race following their defeat. In cricket, the Joburg Super Kings won the toss and they elected to bowl first against the Pretoria Capitals in their Betway SA20 Highveld Derby at the World Wanderers this afternoon. The hosts have made 4 changes to their side from their previous match, with Muin Ali, Evan Jones, Sahardas Viljoen and Lutosi Pamela coming in for Vian Libba, Matisha Patarana, Gerald Kutsia and Bryce Shamsi, while the Capitals have made 1 change, with Dean van Vuren replacing Darren Dupavillen. Finally, in tennis, defending Australian Open champion Jannik Sinner booked his spot in the 3rd round. This is after a 4-6, 6-4, 6-1 and 6-3 victory over Tristan Schoolgate. This win marks his 16th consecutive victory, and he next faces Marcos Giron. With that said, it is a wrap from my side.
So listen, so let's help understand this Bloom Celtic story. It's a bit complicated to me. So they used to play in the top flight,
in the A, yes,
right?
Okay.
The main league.
Yeah.
Then they sold their franchise, right?
Mm-hmm.
They didn't get relegated.
Still days, yeah.
And then who's been playing in this ABC Motsepe League? I mean, how did that happen?
Bloemfontein Celtic.
Having sold it, they got a position.
Got it back.
And now they want to do?
Now they want to play in the Betway Premiership.
And okay, I also want to play, but I know I'm not good enough. How do they? I mean,
they want to buy the status of a club in the Betway Premiership. I'm assuming that they're eyeing Royal AM.
You see, that's exactly what I spoke about to you the other day. For Bloom Celtic supporters listening to us now from Mangaung, they'll be like, yes, it must happen quickly. The reality is, when that sort of thing continues all the time and you just buy your way into positions, it actually destroys the fibre of the league. That is why, if you look at the 10 or 20 teams that make up the PSL now, how much of it has a long legacy?
Yep.
Whereas the normal is, if you struggle, I'm looking at Leeds United from Lucas Radebe's Leeds. You know, they reached the European Champions League semi-final when he was the captain. And then they messed up and they got relegated. They went to the 2nd flight and the 3rd flight. And to get up, they have to sweat it out.
Yeah.
You can't say, well, okay, we didn't get promoted. We'll just buy, let's buy this team that's underperforming called Manchester United. It doesn't work that way.
There's just a thing about earning your spot in the league.
It's a problem. And it's a PSL problem. It may not be a Bloom problem because they will sort it out, but it's a PSL problem. Yeah. Anyway, that's what I think. I wonder what else you guys think. More sport from you tomorrow.
Tomorrow, ke nna Tumeng Kgapele, Modimo ke yo.
After a 1-0 draw in Morocco during the first 90 minutes, Masandawana and the leader are both hungry to wrap up the group campaign with a win. The South locks horns with the North. This is the Total Energies CAF Champions League. Witness the thrilling flavor of African football. Mamelodi Sundowns FC versus AS Farabat FC on Sunday, 19 January at 5:30 p.m. Live on SABC 1 and SABC radio stations. Also available everywhere for everyone, always on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Economic news on SAFM. Facts and figures you can count on.
Right, the SFM Market Update is always hosted by Jimmy Moyaha. Lots to consider. Jimmy, what's moving markets today?
Good afternoon, Ashraf. Good afternoon to the listeners. Markets are a bit nervous at the moment. There's a lot of caution in the market following yesterday's CPI print from the US. Markets are still assessing the full extent of the impact there. But if we look at some of the market movements, it kind of looks like we're going to settle on the right side of that. Before we get to the specifics around the market movements, what's coming up on the show today is we're going to be taking a look at the latest court bid from the legal firm firm or the legal team at Norton Rose Fulbright, they've gone to court to challenge the state on the latest BEE sector code that's being proposed at the moment by the government. They suggest that it is counterintuitive to the efforts of transformation. We're going to look at that. We're going to understand it and see if we can make sense of it, why that court bid, what's the impact that it could have, and particularly this particular code that's being put forward, why we need to be keeping abreast of that. Then we've also got a conversation with the team at SAICA, the South African Institute for Chartered Accountants. They are going to be weighing in on the latest calls by various government or political parties that we should be having something like a gambling sin tax being imposed to discourage gambling or to better educate those that are involved in gambling. So we're going to speak to the tax side of that conversation and see what the tax framework currently looks like and what potential changes could come of that. Then we've also got a conversation with Standard Bank around South African spending habits and how we can use those spending habits to better prepare ourselves for future spending patterns. And because it's Thursday, we wrap the show up with an SME of the week. This week we're chatting to the founder of a company called Mogopodi Adventures. Quite an interesting story around electrical engineer who's built out a business in the adventure and tourism space in South Africa and around the world. So lots to look forward to on the show. But before we get to the show, the markets have been digesting, as I said, the developments from around the world, particularly in the case of the US. And markets today had a green day in terms of Asian markets, all of them in the green. Hong Kong up 1.1%, ASX in Sydney up the biggest gainer in this morning's trading, 1.3% to the green. European markets also in the green, with the CAC 40 leading the bunch there at around 1.9% up for the day, while the FTSE was up about 0.87%. US markets at the moment are marginally in the red. Nasdaq down about 0.12%, but of course Nasdaq was up more than 2% yesterday, so we could be seeing just a bit of profit taking and markets kind of repositioning. US markets obviously do still have that evening trade to go into. Our own local markets had a better day today as well, not as good a day as yesterday. Financials were down about 0.2%, but industrials up 0.88%, cancelling that out. Resources up about 0.25%. As a result, the top 40 up 0.25%, and the all share up 0.17%. The rand holding its ground against the US dollar, giving back a little bit there at 18 rand 81 at the moment, gaining a bit against the pound at 23 rand and 1 cent. 1 euro will cost you 19 rand and 38 cents. 1 Australian dollar 11 rand and 70 cents. Anyone looking at commodities pricing, actually before we get to the commodities, let's look at Bitcoin. $98,000.65 a coin, still below the 2 million rand mark, around the same price it was yesterday, 1.84 million rand in terms of one coin there. If we look at the commodities pricing, platinum and palladium not really moving, 960 in the case of palladium, 950 in the case of platinum. Brent crude back above $80, $81.60 a barrel, not where we want to see it, but the gold price seems to be marching on. That's at $2,715 an ounce at the moment, breaking back above that $2,700 level for the first time in quite a few weeks. So we're going to be looking at that. We're going to be looking at some of the driving factors that have been moving markets today. The likes of SPAR announcing that they're selling their headquarters in a bid to pay down some of that 9 billion rand debt that they have on their balance sheet. So lots to look forward to in the show when we come back a little later on. But for now, Ashraf, back to you.
Thanks for that, Jimmy. Just a quick one. I mean, your masterclass for today. What is that? You're going to talk about currency pegging quickly, yeah?
Yeah, so it's effectively, in a nutshell, when one country uses another country's currency or exchange rate to peg their own currency. So think about the situation that happened in Zimbabwe, where Zimbabwe would then abandon the Zimbabwean dollar after it didn't take off, and they would then use a version of it that was pegged against the US dollar. Or another example that took place in Europe, where the Swiss franc used to be pegged against the value of a euro. So 1 Swiss franc was fixed at a €1.20, and so you kind of have a standardization or a bit more stability in a pegged currency, but that does have its downside. So there are pros and cons towards that. Most of the countries peg against the US dollar because that is considered a global reserve currency, and that's something that we've spoken about this week in our masterclasses as well. So I thought looking at currency pegging following reserve currencies seemed appropriate, but effectively, in a nutshell, it is tying your nation's exchange rate to that of another nation.
Okay, got that. Perfect. Thank you for that. And you have a great show coming up from 6 to 7 here on SAFM, right? Thanks for that, Jimmy. Right, I have you to talk to. Let's engage. Call in, WhatsApp, text, tweet, whatever it is, on some of the biggest issues that has moved the national pulse today. Ceasefire, the Stilfontein miners, the World Economic Forum, placement of schools in terms of schooling education, amongst the issues, and there are many, many more. Let's hear from you.
Conversations that you connect with and react to. SAFM.
And a reminder, if you tuned in, never tune in late, but I had a chat regarding the ceasefire with Anne Hertzberg from the NGO Monitor, and then followed up with George Galloway, right, both of them. So and please listen to the podcast of both of them. So really interesting, different takes, clearly very, very different positions. So you can comment on that, but it would be great if you do, just to be topical about sticking with the ceasefire, to say, what do you think of the terms of the ceasefire? Agree, not agree, and will that hold in terms of, will that be the precursor to peace and a lasting peace? I'll get to Given in Limpopo after this.
Abafana West 10 and the Rockets are both looking for a decent spot in the top half. They are all confident they will walk away from the battlefield with jubilance. This is the Betway Premiership. Catch the great passion and drama of Mzansi's beautiful game. Golden Arrows FC takes on TS Galaxy FC on Saturday, 18 January, live on SABC 1 at 2:30 p.m. and SABC radio stations at 3:30 p.m. Also available everywhere for everyone, always on SABC Plus. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
The SAFM Playwriting Competition is closing on the 3rd of February 2025. Explore the theatre of the mind and write your 60-minute radio drama play and email it before 5 p.m. on the 3rd of February 2025. Late submissions will not be accepted. For further information about the competition, visit safm.co.za or send an email to drama@safm.co.za. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us. Ashraf Garda on SAFM.
Okay, and of course we have people talking about Cape Town, the city of Cape Town being placed number 1 in the world by listeners in terms of the number 1 best city in the world to visit by listeners of the Time Out magazine. I mean, that's a great accolade, isn't it? Okay, Given in Limpopo, let's talk about the Zamazamas.
Hello, how are you, sir?
I'm good indeed, thank you. Right, what's your point, Given?
Yes, I want to talk about that Zamazama. So I want to ask you something. How long will regular Zamazama take? Mureke Okayo. We don't know Muto Arekao, Ilocheladikai, Marabatu, Babi, Zamaza. Look more Springfontein. How many people die now? Already, it's industrial.
Well, we got 78, according to what we know, have died. 78 people have died.
Yeah, already it's industrial. So, who's the owner? Where's the buyer?
Well, I mean, there's a whole lot of partners, obviously, in this business that they call the business of mining, right? And they would be the owners, yeah.
Someone who is doing a business more South Africa, and then most of the Netherlands also.
Yeah, I mean, we know that. I mean, I hear what you're saying about someone doing business. We know that, right? I don't have an answer right now, and clearly there are lots of people, and some of them, well, it's illegitimate at this point in time. It's not legal. Given, thank you for that, right? AB in Durban, let's talk about the ceasefire.
Yes, Ashraf.
Yeah.
You know, people may not be aware that at this time the issue of the ceasefire is not a reality because the confirmation by Israel to the deal was going to take place after Netanyahu was going to get his coalition to vote on it.
Yeah.
But the vote has been postponed because the right-wing party in his government has some issues about the deal. In fact, just a few minutes ago, the ultra-right-wing racist Smotrich told Netanyahu that after the ceasefire, Israel must return to the war on Gaza. Now, my point about the ceasefire is this. Who is going to police it? Who is going to monitor it? Or who is going to enforce it and ensure that there is no transgression? I can give you a list and arm's length of examples of how Israel has regularly shown the two fingers to the deals that it has signed up to. Best example is the Oslo Accords that promised a two-state solution where Rabin and Perez and Arafat received the Nobel Peace Prize, if you remember. The ink had hardly dried when Israel accelerated at full speed the construction of massive Jewish settlements on land that was to be a Palestinian state. In fact, Netanyahu boasted that he was responsible for killing the Oslo deal. So, bottom line, if in fact there is a ceasefire and Israel gets back all the captives held by Hamas, the wholesale slaughter on Gaza will continue. And my last point is this. Israel demonstrated its good faith regarding the ceasefire by killing 73 Palestinians, including 23 children and 25 women since the ceasefire was announced.
Okay, I heard some of those reports. I'm not too sure exactly. I haven't confirmed it from my side, but I heard that. AB, thank you for that. I think the key part is this. You're right. First of all, I know there's been counter arguments within the Israeli Knesset. I can't see that vote not going through. Ultimately, I think Netanyahu has made a deal with Trump, and I can't see him backing down. The question is what happens on Monday, and I think it's an important point. Right, let's talk about BRICS and the dollar. Vivian in KZN, hello.
Hello, Ashraf, and just briefly, compliments of the season to you.
Much appreciated to you too.
Yeah, and I know it's near the end of your program, and your mind is probably quite addled, but it was just when you were talking to Jimmy Muhiaha, the BRICS nations are challenging the dollar, and I think that is something that we should really be discussing, because it's going to affect currencies globally, and I don't see a lot of it in the press or hear about it on the radio.
Okay. Vivian, I'm going to move on. I'll tell you why. First of all, we've definitely spoken about it. Number two, there has not been a formal adoption of a move towards creating a BRICS currency. There's been a lot of media speculation or global speculation. There hasn't been an actual intent. So until that happens, we'll be all talking about it as we are talking about it now, but there's no clear directive. And then if it is, does it affect the dollar? It will. But at the moment, it is just talk. Vivian, thanks for listening in. Appreciate it. Okay, there's lots of other comments that we've had on some of the other issues. Let me just pick it up so I can use it. By the way, tomorrow we chat to Poppy Koza. She's the head of the Civil Aviation Authority as part of the Fireside Chat, the first of the Fireside Chats we have on in this year, right? Okay, let me just pick out some of the comments that we've got. There's lots of thoughts about the miners.
Hey Ashraf, I'm listening to your guest now, the one talking on this issue of miners trapped underground. So this guy is simply just saying, if let's say I forget to lock my gate, I'm creating an environment for criminals to come to my house and take over it. No, we cannot entertain such people. And the way this guy is protecting these illegal immigrants, I think such people are the ones who are benefiting from this illegal immigrants, this illegal mining. People like this guy should really be investigated. This is Leonard from Rustenburg.
Well, many people share your sentiments, and you know what? Many people share his sentiments as well. Here's a story on the number one city in the world.
Ashraf, now you and that mayor, you are pulling our legs. Cape Town, the best city in the world. Yeah, if you take Time Magazine and put them in the fancy hotels, and not take them to the squatter camps and so on, then it can be the best city in the world. Depends on where you take these editors and so on. But I can tell you, please bring back the editor of Time, if it was Time. And let's put him up at Khayelitsha and see how long he will last and how he will hold on to his sentiment on Cape Town being the best. You guys are now playing around, man. Guys, you just get real news, man. Not something that is going to hurt people. People are still struggling in these townships in Cape Town. And this man, the Time magazine or whoever, is saying it is the best city in the world. No, man, guys, no.
Oh, I love you. You guys are playing around. No, you need to listen carefully what I'm saying. This is the city as voted by tourists, not by you and me. By tourists, which means tourists go to tourist places. They judged it the best city compared to other tourism places. That is why my last line in chatting to the mayor to say, hopefully this tourism money can be redirected to places like Bishop Lavis, because there are huge problems in that community. Hopefully you heard that, right? Okay, more thoughts on the Middle East.
Ashraf, good afternoon, man. This is Flores from the beautiful Western Cape. Ashraf, agreeing to something and implementing something is two different things. Yes, there was an agreement to a ceasefire. However, I remain cautiously optimistic that this will take place and last for at least 2 weeks or more. However, Benjamin Netanyahu and Hamas both want to flex their muscles, their military muscles, and they don't give a damn about civilians that needs to suffer through all of this. But very importantly is Donald J. Trump. This president needs to grow up and be very mature about this whole situation. We don't need an extra ego in all of this. Please, Donald, you have a second chance. Secondly, make it count. Have a good job. Bye-bye.
Donald has a second chance. Make it count.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. This is Salim. See, the ceasefire is just a temporary measure so that Israel can get out the hostages. They failed to get out the hostages after 15 months, 478 days of bombing and killing, almost 50,000 Palestinians. So once the hostages are out, they'll continue killing, bombing and killing. Now they spoke about ceasefire. Yesterday they killed 80 people. Today they killed 40 people by continuous bombing. So what peace do they want? The only peace they want is a piece of Palestinian land. So when they kill the Palestinian, steal their land and put settlements.
Okay, that's the thought of Salim. I'm trying to rush through as many as I can before we wrap up the show.
Hi, good afternoon, Ashraf. How are you, Mafuta Ashraf? I don't think this agreement would hold. And in fact, this agreement was supposed to be between the Israelis and the Palestinian government, not between Hamas. Hamas is not the government of Palestine, right? The other thing, if that agreement, Ashraf, doesn't include a two-party states and the relinquishing of occupation of Palestinian land by Israelis, that agreement would not hold for me, Ashraf.
Okay, that's and you've certainly stated your case, Mafuta.
Ashraf, the only solution between Israel and Palestine is if Israel leaves Palestine alone and go back to where they came from. I don't know where. That land belongs to the Palestinians. That's the only way there can be peace in the Middle East. Israel is an invader there. They are settlers. They must just leave Palestine land. Mokoto here from Bloom.
Okay, and I'll try and squeeze in two more very quickly.
We cannot go out there and commit illegal acts and say it's the police who are not doing their jobs. It's us who are committing the illegal acts. Yes, it's not a crime to go and mine there. But
all right, so that sounds just not right. Let's play the last one now.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. Ashraf, what was BMA there doing there at the border there with their drones? Because the same faces which crossed in December for Christmas without documentation, the same faces are at work back in South Africa, still without documents. How come they are back? How did they cross? Were they doing those drones there by the border there? Norman from Brixton.
Okay, got that. Thanks. Can't really comment because our time's up. Don't forget you can catch podcasts of all the conversations we've had today, including the one with Anne Harrisberg, as well as Kali Creel, by the way, as well as George Galloway, and many other issues, like including the Mayor of Cape Town. Listen to that too. We'll do it again tomorrow. It's the National Pulse. Don't forget Poppy Koza, my special guest, the first of the 2025 in the Fireside Chat from 5 to 6 tomorrow. She is truly inspirational. She will inspire you. Listen out for that. Right now, let's get the news. It's 6 o'clock. Here's Denayo Matau.
Thank you, Ashraf. Top story is a call for health checks before circumcision of initial